Well, good morning, everybody. Good morning. That obviously is Christmas music, but I couldn't resist. I couldn't resist because I found that for some reason, the way that my phone plays the musical tunes, the microphone generally will pick it up very nicely. And we can enjoy a little bit of an intro with music before we launch into these live streams. Because as most of you know, I've been battling the audio factor. We had video factors. We overcame most of those, apart from the occasional YouTube glitches where the camera will just go black and the live stream is done. And then I have to restart it again, which I'm prepared to do today if it happens to us. But that particular tune is some of the music that I put into the video that I did when I showed you the lights in Oconto at Christmas time. But it just seems like it fits anytime, doesn't it? As long as there's snow on the ground, we can enjoy that. Well, let me look at the live chat real quick before we launch into this. And then I will begin to present this fabulous Western Germany machine that started its journey for Tenielle from eBay. She found this machine on eBay, and it really is quite a fortunate find. There's so many lemon machines on eBay, and this is one of those nugget machines that quite honestly is just fabulous. It needed some extra attention as far as wiring, some motor work, etc. But the overall patina and the presentation of the machine is just majestic, isn't it? Quite a lovely machine. All right, let me look at the live chat real quick. Well, it looks like I can say good morning to Susie from Minnesota and Emma from Florida. Oh, and our owner is here, Tenielle. And Tenielle and Scott, not me, Scott, her Scott. Tenielle and Scott, her husband, work as physician assistants. And because of their work, they've been a number of different places. When we first started communicating, I want to say that they were either in Nebraska or in Ohio. Nebraska or Ohio, because some of the correspondence I got from them had Nebraska associated with it, then Ohio, and then ultimately, I think I got a note from Scott from Arizona. And now, wait for it. Now they are out in the beautiful, beautiful state, and everyone hates them for it. Everyone hates them because they're out in the beautiful state of Oregon. Oregon is one of the loveliest states in our country, and that's where they are now. So it's great to have Tenielle as part of the live stream, and she's so excited to get this machine out there in Oregon. As most of you know, the 130-6s are not a lightweight machine, so I have it on this workbench. Originally, I had it on the other workbench. If you look at the pictures that I'm going to post after the live stream of the progress that I took Tenielle's 130-6 through, I had it on the other workbench, and I thought, well, that's silly. I'm going to live stream this machine, and then I've got to move right into carefully packing this very heavy Western Germany sewing machine. So I might as well just live stream it over here so I can save the extra step. So that's why if you look at the pictures and you go, wait a second, didn't it start over there? The answer is yes. It started on the other workbench and now it's migrated over to here. I'd love to tell you that Herr Obermeister and the boys lifted it up, but yeah, it's a little bit out of their league. It's a little bit heavier than they'd be willing to take on. Yeah, Herr Obermeister's going, no, this is not going to work. Too heavy. So let me look again at the live chat. I welcomed a number of folks. Who else do I have to welcome? Oh, good morning to Sunny as well. Sunny from the great state of Pennsylvania. Who else? Good morning to Renee from Oconto, Wisconsin, a local gal, a good friend of mine, and I know her family as well. Wonderful folks in this neck of the woods. Good to see you, Renee. And who else? Oh, and good morning to Vicky as well. It looks like Vicky too. And Vicky is from the great state of Ohio. So Sunny and Vicky are almost neighbors, with Ohio and Pennsylvania obviously bordering each other. I'm not trying to impress you with my geography knowledge. I get lost in a mall parking lot even when I set the alarm off on my car. So yeah, I'm not going to try to impress you that I know that Pennsylvania and Ohio are next to each other, because yeah, that's about the extent of my geography knowledge. Yeah, that's about it. And good morning to Kathy King as well. And you'll notice, I think, in the description, if you look at the description of this live stream, I've added a little invitation now for anyone that is in the live stream or anyone that happens to watch this as a video afterwards. And that is Google reviews. Google reviews are a big deal. And so I provided a link in there. Anyone that admires my work or respects the work that I do or loves the machines that I present or enjoys the videos and finds them inspirational and knowledgeable and blah, 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 you can write a Google review for Cow Country, which would be greatly appreciated. And recently, I believe Kathy King did that. So thank you to Kathy and others that have accepted that challenge of writing a great review to help out Cow Country and to encourage other people to check us out. You know, by checking us out, they learn about the fun stuff we put on Facebook. They learn about the informational and fun stuff I put on YouTube, and they just get excited about sewing in a new way. Sewing traditionally can be a little bit boring for some people, but when you start seeing funny stuff popping up about sewing and it becomes more entertaining, stuff like this that I just post in the form of reels on Facebook. Check this out.
I see them, Mr. Spock. They're going to try to rush me and get my sewing machine that Scott prepared for me at Cow Country. Not going to happen. We'll fight to the death. I see them, Mr. Spock.
All right. We got the point. But I try to inject, as most of you know, I try to inject assaults on the camera whenever possible. Yikes. Okay, we're back. Wow, that was weird. Okay, I try to inject fun into vintage sewing machine space. And I think it attracts a lot of people because there's others out there that when they present sewing machines, when they talk about vintage sewing machines, it quite literally is like going to a wake for someone that's passed away. It is a recipe. And again, if you don't know this, if I didn't mention it already, I think I mentioned it. Tenielle and her husband, Scott, are both physician assistants. So they have to prescribe things. They do a number of doctor type stuff to help out their patients all the time. And if any of them are battling with insomnia, if any of Tenielle or Scott's patients are battling with insomnia, guess what? You can go to a lot of these sewing related YouTube channels, or you can go to a lot of the sewing related Facebook pages, and they will be a great cure. They're a natural cure. You just turn on the channel and it puts you to sleep. We try to avoid that at Cow Country. Myself and the leadership team, we inject fun into it. We engage people in interesting conversations in the live chat. So if you're in the shadows right now, join the live chat and make some new friends and have some interesting conversations with people from around the world. And we have people from around the world all the time in these live streams, so you can make new friendships that sometimes will span 8 to 10,000 miles from where you're located. Yeah, it's a big deal. So by all means, take advantage of that and make some new friends on this channel today. And by doing a potential Google review, another shameless plug here, by doing a potential Google review, again, the link is in the description for this live chat and this live stream. you can let more people know about us and they can join the fun. Okay, enough about that. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, so let's get into a little bit more info. Haha. About Tenielle's amazing eBay find. I talk about eBay all the time as a two-edged sword. It's a two-edged sword because there are people like me that used to be on eBay selling sewing machines, painstakingly restoring them. Our good friend Alex Askarov from the UK, I hardly need to tell you who he is, but maybe some people don't know him because his base of operations is 4,000 miles away over in the United Kingdom. And I recently shared with you that he is now battling for his life with a rare cancer that he's been diagnosed with in the last 30 days. And I posted that on Facebook, and a number of you have already rallied around it and sent messages of encouragement to Alex as well. But Alex, also like me, sells sewing machines on eBay UK. And he's a good guy, and he loves machines, and he tries to prepare them very well. Alex and I are the exceptions. Most of them out there will pick them up at rummage sales, thrift shops, or other places like that, and they quickly spit polish them, and they maybe put a couple drops of oil where they think they're supposed to go. Some of them, unfortunately, they think that they're supposed to oil the motor. Not a good idea, but you know what? There's a lot of charlatans on eBay and Etsy and Pinterest and other places like that. So when you occasionally find a nugget of a machine like this, a rare find that really is, as Tenielle shared with me privately, she got it at a good price. And it really is a spectacular machine overall. It just needed a little bit of TLC, a little bit of workshop magic, and now it's ready to go underneath the bright lights and do its dance today. But you know what? It's very rare that people will find these nuggets in those different venues because the people selling them just don't care. They want to turn a quick buck. They want to make a quick dollar, and they'll present it as fully restored when it's nothing of the sort. So, but Tenielle and others are very, 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 very smart shoppers, and they will vet their sellers, and they will look at them and check it out and double check and triple check. And she made a real wise purchase in getting this really, really cool 130-6. And again, I haven't gotten the pictures posted on Facebook yet, but I will be posting them later today, showing you the process that I took Tenielle's machine through. All right, quick question for you all as I take a deep breath so I don't pass out. What year, and I talked about this on Facebook, what year was the Pfaff 130 first introduced? The Pfaff 130 Maschine of Deutschland. When was this machine first introduced? Type it into the live chat. And if you're the first one to do it and you reach out to me after the live stream, I will give you a choice of one of Susie's super cool hats. And if you're saying, what do you mean super cool hats? What is that about? Well, let me show you. Susie has prepared all of these amazing hats. I'm not going to be able to show them to you real well. I'm going to do my best. Hold on a second. All right, sort of got it. So she's prepared all of these fabulous, I'm looking for some place to put it, all of these fabulous hats. Gone to Holland, to Rhea. They've gone over to the UK, to Adam and his partner that eventually, probably not, because British people are conservative. They're private people. But I asked him if he would consider taking some photos over by Buckingham Palace with a couple of Susie's hats, and he's still thinking about it. So we're not going to hold our breath on that one. But you know what? Maybe. But these hats are just phenomenal, and they're starting to go all over the place, all over the globe. They've got scrolly writing. They've got case writing or whatever that stuff is called. And there's all different types of flavors of them. So Yeah, someone was willing to jump into answering when the 130 was first introduced by Pfaff, then yeah, you might get a hat. You might get a hat. And you don't have to wear it by Buckingham Palace like I've asked Adam and his partner to do, but you can certainly send some pictures to us. That would be super cool. That would be super, super cool. Okay, let's see here. And Emma wrote 1932. Yeah, that's right. Emma pays attention. All of you pay attention usually, unless you're thinking about summer break or something like that when you're in school and every day leading up to summer break, you're like, I can't get into this. I can't focus on mathematics. I'm thinking about having fun with my friends. But Emma and others in this classroom are very, very good students. And Emma is absolutely spot on with 1932. Okay, another question to test Emma and others. Matter of fact, I'm going to ask Emma not to answer this one. Okay. What year was the first rotary hook machine that preceded this one? What year was the first rotary hook machine by Pfaff introduced? Yeah, that's it. I was going to get more elaborate, but that's really it. When was the first rotary hook machine introduced by Pfaff? All right, anyone but Emma. Emma, you're excluded from this one, dear. Sorry. Anyone know that answer? And it's important because the rotary hook option for Pfaff opened up the gateway for a lot of other models, including the 130 that was introduced, as Emma said, in 1932. So what year did Pfaff have their first rotary hook machine? And rotary, again, if you're brand new to sewing, is where the hook on the raceway goes completely around and around and around and around and around and around and around like that. It doesn't do the oscillating hook thing like you'll see on some of the models that goes like this, like a pendulum. Yeah. All right. Any guesses? Any guesses? Sonny's a hoot. Sonny goes, I pay attention to Emma. Oh my gosh. You know what? It's almost like copying someone's paper. I didn't really do that ever, maybe. In school, I never really looked at someone else's paper. But you know what? It's kind of like that when you got a real smarty pants in the live stream, like Emma and Sonny and others and Christine and pretty much everyone that's in the classroom is a smarty pants. Everyone's going to be tempted. They're going to be tempted to look over at that paper and say, I wonder what their answer is. I'm not going to change my answer, but I wonder why they put D and I put A. Yeah, I just wonder. Don't you? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. No one's answering me. Emma has just totally intimidated all of you. Yeah. Yeah. Don't be intimidated by Emma. Don't. Okay. The first rotary hook machine by Pfaff was introduced 10 years, and this is an easy way to remember it. It was introduced 10 years prior to them introducing the Pfaff Class 130. So 1922 was Pfaff's first rotary hook machine. And then 10 years later, they came out with the Class 130. And they had a number of different classes in the 130, kind of like Singer's flavors of a number of machines that they've made, the Class 66 and the Class 15. And it's like Baskin Robbins with a bobbin. It's like Baskin Robbins with a bobbin because some of these makers will have so many variations, so many different flavors of a particular class. It becomes mind-boggling. Like, what is it? I got no idea. Help! So just to name a few of them, and I would love to tell you that it's my clairvoyance being a sewing savant, world renowned, but it's not. In the front of the instruction manual for the Pfaff 130 class, in the front of the instruction manual for the 130 class, yeah, I'm still getting a little bit of glare off of the lights, just a little bit glare. Right in the front of here, it gives you on page 1, it gives you some of those flavors that they came with. The top one right there that you can see, the 130-6, is the one that we're going to be working with today that Tenielle found on eBay. And then they had other flavors like the 130-14. And it says it's basically the same as the 130-6, but it has an attachment for eyelet embroidery. Anyone wants to type into the live chat what eyelet embroidery is? I think most of us know what embroidery is, but if anyone wants to describe what eyelet embroidery is, that would be super cool. Like I say, we all are fellow teachers. So if you're familiar with eyelet embroidery, make us smart on what it is, because that's what the 130-14 can do. And then there's a 130-115, which is the same again as the 130-6, but it has a cording attachment. And then finally, the 130-14-115. Don't you think they could probably just add like one or two more numbers to that particular model class? So the 130-14-115 is the same as the 130-14, but with a cording attachment. So that's just a small sampling of the class 130 flavors that Pfaff came out with, a lot of them being modeled and mirrored after the 130-6. And as most of you know, the 130-6 can also have an embroidery kit attached to the back of it, right about here where I'm touching. And then it gives you a number of decorative ornamental type stitch outputs. And it does that by manipulating the stitch width and stitch length very rapidly, mechanically, not with a computer program, but mechanically. And I've demonstrated the 130-6 before that has that embroidery kit, or some people crudely refer to it as the coffee grinder. If anyone understands why they call the embroidery kit that can be mounted to the back of a 130-6 like this that belongs to Tenielle, why they call it a coffee grinder, make me smart. Make me smart and tell me why they call it a coffee grinder, because I've operated a number of them. I've serviced and repaired a number of those embroidery kits that go to the back of these 130-6s, and I've never gotten a craving for coffee. I've never gotten a craving for coffee, not even once. So why do they call them coffee grinders? Really, I wonder. I'm just curious if you know, maybe you've got to be from a different era, or you've got to have a different insight to understand why they call it a coffee grinder, because I don't have a clue. Do you? Even she doesn't know. So yeah, I mean, it's a little bit puzzling, isn't it? How they come up with different names for different things. All right. Oh, and hello to Candido. Hello to Candido from New York. I just saw his name pop up. So hello to Candido from New York. And Candido is a new customer of mine and is eventually going to be shown on this channel with his machine. I should rephrase that, because it sounds like Candido is coming to Wisconsin to join me in the live stream, which he's certainly welcome to do. But Candido is going to be acquiring from the workshop a Swedish beauty, and he and I are in cahoots right now, pulling that plan together. So if you want to wish Candido an early congratulations on getting a Swedish beauty from the workshop, you can do that right now. Yeah, you can give him a thumbs up or a smiley face or go, yeah, because eventually you're going to see Candido's Swedish beauty in a similar setting like this, doing its magical dance under the bright lights, which my cameras don't tend to like very much. But you know what? It'll be fun. It'll be a lot of fun to show Candido's Swedish beauty eventually. Okay. So a quick thing about Tenielle's 130-6. Let me first of all ask for your help. Is it okay if I ask for your help? Like I say, we're all fellow teachers, we're all fellow students, and I've already looked it up, but I would like to encourage you to look up the date of Tenielle's 130-6. And if you don't know it, the serial number for the 130-6 is going to be right underneath the edge of the bed right here, stamped on a plate. I better drink something. I'm getting like a weird voice right now. All right, hold on. All right, I'm going to give you the serial number, and I'm going to ask you to look it up. And if you're willing to look it up, as I said with the other challenge a little bit ago, and you get it right, if you look up the serial number and you get the year that this machine was made correctly, I will give you your choice of one of Susie's hats. I will give you a choice of one of Susie's hats. Okay, get your pencils, get your pens, get your crayons out, and get ready to write down this serial number, okay? So the serial number on Tenielle's 130-6 is, and let me say this, when I read this off, if one of the leaders would please type this into the live chat, if you would please type this into the live chat once I say it, that would be great. Yep, okay. All right, here it is. 459 3153. 459 3153. Call now. Operators are waiting. 459 3153. Yes, operators are waiting. They're not really waiting. It's only me. And occasionally, this guy answers the phone, and I can't tell you how many customers we've lost as a result of him. He's got his own style, and people just don't get it. They don't get it. Yeah. So again, 459 3153. 459 3153. Someone wants to look up the date of this machine. That would be great. And I'll give you a big clue. You'll want to go to the ISMAX site. ISMAX site is the one that we generally go to for looking up serial numbers. They've got a great resource bank, and they also have a great resource bank on the serial brackets for the Pfaff vintage machines, if you didn't know that. So if someone wants to look it up and then type the year of birth for Tenielle's Pfaff 130. 130. Yeah, that would be great. Oh, good morning to Christina. Yeah, good morning to Christina. I had to check if it was Christina or Christine, but I think it's Christina. And yeah, okay. While you're doing that, I'm going to do the first stitch off on Tenielle's machine. I've got some basic 100% cotton. I've got some stiffener in there, and we'll buzz down and do a couple of stitch lines with Tenielle's machine. And I don't have this attached anyway, so I'm probably going to anchor it off just a little bit so I can sew a little bit more straight. And I didn't tell you all, I should have told you about this earlier, but I told you that Tenielle and her husband, Scott, are physician assistants. So if you want to try to be totally unscrupulous and tacky, you can take advantage of Tenielle being in the live chat, and you can ask her medical questions that have nothing to do with the sewing machine that we're presenting today. Yeah, you can do that. I don't know if she'll respond, and you might get thrown into the penalty box by one of the moderators, but you can try. You can ask her, hey, what do you think if I got this on my toe? Or what do you think about this if I got this wart in the middle of my back and it keeps getting bigger and it's got a hair in the middle of it? Like, yeah, I'm getting really gross. But along with being a gifted physician assistant like her husband, Scott, she also is a very gifted seamstress as well. Tenielle is a very gifted seamstress, and that is from her husband, so it is going to be absolutely correct. So you can also ask her questions about the type of stuff that she sews as a seamstress as well, and how you find time to be a gifted seamstress and also a professional in the healthcare space as a physician assistant. I think it's nothing short of a superpower. It's nothing short of a superpower. Yeah, it is. Okay, let me buzz down this and then we will move forward. And I'm also going to walk you around this machine a little bit. I'm going to show you the threading of it, talk about the setup, because unlike the other two machines that Scott, Tenielle's husband, brought from Ohio to the workshop many months ago, Tenielle has never sewn on this 130-6 before. She's never sewn on it. So I'm going to provide some tips that may be beneficial to her, even as a seamstress, and also some tips that will be beneficial to others in the audience and others that will watch this video later, hopefully. Okay. And also, I'll show you real quick. This particular machine is set up with an electronic foot controller. It's set up with an electronic foot controller, and that is an option on any vintage sewing machine. You can always set up a vintage sewing machine with an electronic foot controller. It's not going to be the purest approach, purist like P-U-R-I-S-T. It's not going to be the purest approach, but it is the practical approach sometimes, depending on the type of sewing that you're going to be doing. Electronic foot controllers are great if you're going to be doing a lot of slow, controlled sewing, because they don't have carbon stacks inside of them like most traditional ceramic-based foot controllers, and these will not overheat if you operate them at very low speeds. So that is a big benefit of having an electronic foot controller over a standard vintage type foot controller. The only thing to look out for is you've got to know the rating of the foot controller in relation to the motor that the machine has. I talked about it in some of the posts that I did on Facebook. The very common motors to be on these 130 machines for Pfaff and the 130-6s. And the big difference between the two models is the 130-6s are going to typically come with dual cleated belts. And that's why when you look across the top of the machine over by the pillar, it's going to be noticeably wider over here, because instead of having one cleated belt to drive the main shaft, you've got two. So, but the big thing is make sure that they are compatible, the foot controller and the motor. Most of these, like I was beginning to say, will come with a 1.1 amp motor. Some of them have a 1.3 amp motor. Tenielle's, again, being a nugget that she found on eBay, and it's very, very unusual, comes with a U.S. original Pfaff made motor. And I know that sounds like a contradiction, but Pfaff commissioned U.S. companies to make their motors to their standards. So they're a beautifully built motor, very, very powerful, very, very well made. And this one, instead of having a 1.1 amp motor or a 1.3 amp motor, does anyone know what size motor Tenielle's machine has? I posted it on Facebook. So if you do Facebook and you follow Cow Country, you already know, because I showed it in one of the reels, R-E-E-L. I showed it in one of the reels, and I talked about how unusual it was. And when you look at the back of this foot controller, it's a good thing that this foot controller is compatible with the motor. I'll try to get it close enough to the camera so you can read the back of this foot controller. I think you can read it. You might be able to read it. And I wasn't pointing out that it says made in Taiwan, okay? I wasn't pointing out that it was made in Taiwan. I was pointing out that it's rated at 1.4 amps. 1.4 amps. And that's a big deal, because remember, when you plug your sewing machine in, it doesn't matter if it's a vintage Pfaff 130-6 like this, or whether it's a brand new long arm quilter like I get in the workshop from referrals from Joann's all the time, a $12,000 electronic computerized blah, blah, blah machine. When you plug those machines in, the electricity flows through the foot controller first. This is the gateway to your motor. And so if this is either underrated or it's incompatible in some way with your motor is not going to perform at the peak of what it could otherwise do. The general rule, and I say this all the time, the general rule is the foot controller always needs to be equal to or higher in its amperage tolerance than the motor. Let me say that again. The foot controller always needs to be equal to, or better yet, higher than in amperage tolerance to the motor. So if the motor is 1.3, this needs to be at least 1.3 or higher. So I'm going to look at the live chat, see if he got it right as far as the motor that's on Tenielle's machine. And then we'll do our first sew off finally. Finally. Oh, and hello to Sheila as well. Hello to Sheila. So a number of you nailed it. A number of you nailed it, which means you follow things on Facebook. Tenielle's 130-6 comes with a 1.4 amp motor. I can count on one hand. How many times I've seen a 1.4 amp motor on one of these machines. It's very unusual. It's very, very unusual. And when I went through to service and repair this motor, I was amazed at the engineering of the US company that built this motor to the specs and criteria of the Pfaff sewing machine company that was based in Western Germany when this machine was born. I didn't even look at the live chat. Did anyone get the date? Did anyone look up the serial number that I gave you and get the date of when this machine was born? I'm going to scroll up real quick and see if anyone got the correct date. Hold on. Okay, it looks like Kathy King put 1952, and then Emma put 1951. Have you ever taken a test in school? Where the teacher says that one answer is the only answer that you can choose? Otherwise, if you wrote another answer, it's going to be wrong. Well, in this instance, both ladies, Kathy King and Emma, are both correct, because the way the brackets are broken out on the ISMAX summary that shows the different bracket dates for the Pfaff machines, it's not really clear because their serial breakout is so high level, it's so minimal. It's not really clear whether it was 1951 or 1952. It's one of the two. So I'm going to say that both of you ladies that guessed 1951, 1952, both of you are correct. So ultimately, it's going to be up to Tenielle when she tells the tale of this machine and she shows it to her friends and family out in Oregon once it gets out there. It's going to be up to her for her to choose the birth date for her own machine. She might even come up with the month and day as well. Who knows? But 1951 or 1952 is correct. So well done, ladies. Well done. All right. What else do we have? Oh, nice. So the owner has spoken. The owner has spoken and said December of 1952. Now, if any of you want to press Tenielle, any of you want to press Tenielle and say, okay, we know you picked December 1952. Fine and dandy. What day in December are you going to get a cake and you're going to put candles on it and you're going to have a birthday party for your Western Germany sewing machine? What day in December? We got to know. So if anyone, not me, I'm not going to press the owner. I work for the owner. If she doesn't want to tell us, fine and dandy. But you know what? If any of you want to press Tenielle for the day, go for it. I think that'd be totally cool. Yeah, you should. Yeah. Yep, you should do that. Yep. Where am I? There you are. Yeah. Put your hands up. Put your hands up. Put your hands up. Put your hands up. All right. I'm going to look at the live chat and then we'll sew this finally and see if Tenielle picked a day. 23rd. 23rd. Yes. So December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas, if you remember, all of you remember, light a candle for Tenielle's machine on December 23rd, 2 days before Christmas. She's going to be having a big bash, a big party. If you don't get invited, don't feel bad. It's going to be like a really small gathering. It's going to be a private gathering with Scott, not me, Scott, her Scott. It's going to be a gathering with her Scott, maybe some select key friends and family members. They might even draw the curtain so no one in the public knows that the party is going on, but it's going to be a big deal. It's going to be a big deal. So listen for the hooting and hollering out in Oregon on December 23rd of this year. Yeah, December 23rd. All right. So let me finally, blah, blah, blah. Let me finally stitch this off. And you can see I've already done a little bit of it off camera. You kind of look at this in the camera shot. Where is it? Somewhere there. I might change the angle of this camera a little bit because it's kind of getting goofy as far as the lighting. Let me see if I can get a different angle on this. There we go. Okay. So anyway, yeah, I did do some stitching on it already. There we go. That's a better angle, I think, as far as the lighting. Yeah, okay. So I showed you what I did. Now let's actually do it. And we are going to be sewing with, I should show you this as well. We are going to be sewing with a needle that Susie from Minnesota sent me. It's called a stick nail embroidery needle. A stick nail embroidery needle, a size 90-14. A size 90-14 stick nail embroidery needle. Now, embroidery needles, as a general rule, are not a really good needle for me to pick for live streams because I sew generally I sew a pretty wide field of materials. And embroidery needles are designed a little bit differently. They've got a larger eye. They've got a larger eye on the needle to accommodate thicker threads or multiple threads. They also have a kind of a ballpoint point. It sounds like I'm repeating myself, but I'm really not. They've got a ballpoint point, so it's not ideal to use an embroidery needle to sew needle. Oh my gosh. I need another drink of Diet Coke. It's not ideal for an embroidery needle to sew leather, is what I meant to say. Because of the point on it, it's a rounded ballpoint point, and that's not ideal for piercing leather. But we're going to do it anyway. Why? Because we're rebels. We're going to be doing it anyway using this stick nail embroidery needle, size 90-14. And the thread we're using is my go-to thread from Joann Fabrics. I buy 3, I get 2 free on the weekend. It's really true. You buy 3, you get 2 free. They're also starting to do it now with the Gutermann thread as well, which is really cool. But I use the dual duty, all-purpose XP standard blah, blah, blah thread. So it's not a fancy thread, but it gets the job done very nicely. Okay. So with that, listen carefully to this Western Germany machine go down this simple sew off of this 100% cotton. Okay. All right. Finally, Scott, what have we been running like 2 hours and you're finally going to do a sew off? Thanks a lot, buddy. Thanks a lot. We haven't been going 2 hours. We've been going 47 minutes. 47 minutes, you critics. All right, here we go. All right, listen carefully. Whoa, slow down, buddy. Slow down. Even with my clips on there, I couldn't sew straight. Even with my clips. I have an issue with sewing straight. It must be a rebellious thing or something. All right, so we just pulled it through. Oh, yeah, very lovely. Very lovely. Look at that top stitching. Wait, let me pull a little bit further. Beautiful, beautiful top stitching. The only thing I might do, and I was goofing around with this off camera, is I might bump up the upper tension a little bit, which I just did, because our lock stitch is really quite good, but it's not as good as it can be. Let me take this off because that's kind of causing a little bit of a weird thing. Okay, let's take a look at that again now. All right, I almost have the right angle. I'm really close. There we go. There we go. So a beautiful top stitch through this 100% cotton with a stiffener. Not impressive because the machine is so strong. And then this is our lock stitch, which I'm saying is good, but it's underserved just a little bit. It could be sharper. It could have a little more poppiness to it. Just a little bit more poppiness to it. So I just bumped up the upper tension just slightly to give it a little bit more poppiness. Okay, so let's go on to the next sew off now. And I'm going to continue to use this 100% cotton for a little bit. The other thing I'm going to show you as well, once I get done doing the sew offs on this 100% cotton, is there is an adjustment on this machine, which a lot of people don't understand. So I'm going to explain it to you. And that way, if you have one of these machines, or for the owner's benefit, since she hasn't sewn on this machine yet, she'll be able to manipulate this control on this machine that a lot of people don't even know that it exists. They don't even know that it exists. I have my phone on. I'll bet you it's a solicitor. Hold on. Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Hello? Hi.
Hi, this is Rachel with the Small Business Funding Department. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you fine, Rachel. Rachel, I'm actually in the middle of I'm in the middle of a live stream right now, so I've got to say that I can't talk to you right now, and I don't need a loan.
Okay,
I don't need a loan for my
Okay,
business,
goodbye.
but thank you so much. Yeah, take care. Bye. Have you ever had a solicitor that is excited to get rid of you? Usually they try to stay on the phone with you and they try to lengthen the call and they try to use their little script to try to find ways to keep you on the phone for the idea of getting you to buy into whatever they're wanting to sell you. As soon as I mentioned that I was in the middle of a live stream, she's like, okay, all right, bye. That's how you get rid of solicitors. When they call you on your cell phone or on your landline or whatever, tell them you're in the middle of a live stream. See if it works for you too. And then at the next live stream, let us know if that technique works to get rid of solicitors. Yeah, let me know. Let me know. Oh, it's fun messing with people sometimes, isn't it? Just a little bit. Okay. So I bumped up my upper tension a little bit. Now let's lay down a much smaller straight stitch next to this. And I think that last call that I just got, I get calls from these people all the time, and they want to loan me money for my small business of cow country. And I just tell them I don't need a loan, but they're like, well, but it'll help grow your business and it'll help you do this and it'll help you do that. All of you have gotten those calls too, I'm sure. And so, yeah, what do you do with that other than just tell them that you're in the middle of a live stream and then they go away very quickly? So, yeah, that's my new approach. Okay, so what I'm going to do real quick is, hold on a second. What I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to move the camera carefully. I hope I don't disconnect this. I'm going to move the camera real carefully over to the front of Tenelle's machine. I've got to look over my shoulder so I can see if I'm aiming it correctly. I think I am. I'm going to rest it on the table so I can be a little bit more stable, maybe. Hold on. All right. I sort of kind of got it. Sort of kind of. Okay. So walking around the machine real quick. Walking around the machine real quick. This is going to be our feed dog drop right here. If you want to drop the feed dogs, you turn it clockwise. The feed dogs go down. And if you turn it back counterclockwise, the feed dogs will pop back up again. So you always want to have it all the way to the left for regular sewing. Our stitch length controller, unlike most machines where when you want a longer stitch, you're going to move the stitch length controller down in the range. on this particular machine, if you want the longest stitch possible, which is going to be right around 5 stitches per inch, you want to push this all the way to the top. If you want to reverse sew, you've got to bring it all the way down to the bottom. And again, this is different compared to other machines. Most other machines, if you want to go in reverse, particularly the Singer ones, you've got to turn this, you got to slide this all the way to the top. On this one, if you want to reverse sew or back tack, you bring it all the way to the bottom. And then when you get in this range right here, just below the demarcation line of the 0, you can actually affect the length of the stitching in reverse, which I think is really a cool option to have, where you can actually not just have a standard reverse stitch length, but you can actually modify it depending on what your project goals are. But for most of the sewing we're going to be doing today, we're going to be near the top range of this. And I got to unscrew this to go all the way up. There we go. We're going to be near the top of this. And as I just showed you, you can kind of unscrew this or screw this so you can lock it into position. But we're going to be right up around the 5 marker, which should give us a very nice, long, robust stitch. But for our next stitch, I'm going to bring it down just a little bit to right around 4. And I'll kind of demonstrate a couple lines of stitching to show you the stitch length difference and how we can affect that. Over here, I'll just point out, if you want to wind a bobbin, you just push this down to engage it. And then, wait, am I off camera? I think I am. There we go. So if you want to wind a bobbin, you push this down to engage it against the rim of the balance wheel. And by the way, if you didn't know it, the balance wheel on these Pfaffs is not metal. It's not metal. It's actually going to be a plastic resin. And I don't know why Pfaff elected to make the balance wheel out of plastic versus metal, but they did. And so when you engage it, you'll make contact with this plastic balance wheel to the inside rim. And then as the bobbin fills, this will automatically, or should automatically, push up to disengage it. And the only step I didn't mention, but it's pretty commonly understood, is you want to also disengage the clutch by rotating that towards you. And then when you're done winding the bobbin, you rotate it away from you to lock it back into place so you get main shaft drive again. And the basic setup for the basic setup I use for winding a bobbin, and others might use a slightly different method, is coming off the top, say from right here, coming off the top, you're going to come from here to this thread guide over here. You're going to come over the top of this tensioner. Then you're going to come across the front of the machine, down to this tensioner. And then from there, you're going to come straight up to the bobbin. So it's kind of like coming from here to here, and you kind of go underneath here. If you can't see that, you kind of bring the thread underneath this thread guide and then over the top of the tensioner. And then you come across the machine like this to this tensioner and then straight up to the bobbin. And then just engage it like I showed you and disengage the clutch. Okay? So that's how you wind a bobbin on this machine. It's kind of like a bing, like that. Okay? So it's easy enough to do. Easy enough to do. Okay, a little bit more about the controls. This control right here is going to control stitch width. And so when we're doing a straight stitch, you're going to have it set on 0 or thereabouts. And then when you want to move into the zigzag functions of this machine, you then move this somewhere between 1 and 4. Somewhere between 1 and 4. Okay? This is going to set a boundary so that you'll be able to restrict how far this stitch width controller can move by screwing this in or screwing this out. I never use this, but maybe someone does. So that's the function of it, is to set a boundary as far as the range of the stitch width. This right here is going to be your needle position. You push this in, you push it in, and then you can swivel this, and the whole control moves. You push it in, you can swivel it up or swivel it down to give yourself either a right needle position, a left needle position or a center needle position is what this does. And again, you push it in almost like you're pushing a gas pedal. You push it in, and then you can swivel this up or swivel it down. Yep. Our upper tension, and here's the tricky thing about this upper tension. I'll just show you real quick. And hopefully you'll be able to see this okay. There's a little adjuster right here. And this is an adjuster that affects the take-up spring on the machine. I've talked about this on other machines as well, where depending on the range of motion for that take-up spring will determine whether or not you get a nicely defined lock stitch, and also will determine how your thread responds to the sewing process. The further the range of motion your take-up spring, the take-up spring is this little spring right here that I'm kind of moving a little bit. The further your take-up spring moves in the range of motion, the more stress it puts on the thread. So if you're working with a delicate thread like 100% rayon, you don't want to have a lot of range of motion on that take-up spring. Some people also call this a check spring. I have no idea why, but the take-up spring, the less range of motion, the less stress it puts on your thread. So if you're working with a more delicate thread, you want to reduce that. It also is going to determine how much pull it gives to that thread in the sewing process to pull that thread taut when that needle sweeps through and passes through your material and starts on the upstroke. It's going to determine how tightly it pulls on that thread to define your lock stitch. So if you're sewing through thicker material, you want to have a stronger pull. You want to have a larger range of motion. If you're sewing through something more delicate, you want to have less range of motion and you want to have less pull so it doesn't create bunching or weird, feed as far as the material. I hope that makes sense. So the way you engage it is when it's all the way at the top, like you can see right now, when it's all the way at the top, it's at the highest position. As the manual describes it, it's in position A right now. Position A is at the very top of where you can set this fine adjuster. In position A, it's going to put the least amount of tension on the thread. It's going to put the least amount of strain on the thread. This is going to be your delicate sewing setting right here at the top of the setting right here. This is going to be the delicate, the silks, the satins, the real light materials will be way up here. As you want to increase this to ensure that you get proper definition on that lock stitch, as you want to increase the likelihood of getting better definition and you're sewing heavier materials like denims, as you're sewing other heavier materials, maybe some leathers. But yeah, don't use a stick needle embroidery needle like we're doing today. But as you're sewing leathers, you then push this down like I'm going to do right now. Watch. So I push this down. See, I just pushed it down. It was all the way up here. I pushed it down. As I push it down, I'm increasing the range of motion of that take-up spring. I'm increasing the tension on that take-up spring as well. In other words, it's going to create more resistance, which is going to create more definition generally for that lock stitch. If I'm going to be sewing something crazy heavy, like we might do during this live stream today, then I want to push this all the way down. Right now, I started in position A. I'm sewing some light silks and satins. Then I go to position B, and it's not like it clicks. You can kind of wiggle it and kind of set boundaries, you can move it anywhere you want to move it. But we go from position A, say, to position B. And then finally, if we want to go crazy and we want to put a lot of tension on that take-up spring and really increase that range of motion, we can push it all the way down to position C, all the way down here, way down there. It's like way, way, way down there. It's like way, I don't know if I turn the camera, you can see, but it's like way, way, way over there now. So I can begin to move it back because we're going to be sewing something not quite as heavy. Here it's coming back now. And then finally take it all the way back to position A. Position A, B, and C, I guess, makes sense for a manual. But for my purposes, I would just say all the way up like it is right now is for light sewing. As you increase the thickness of materials you're sewing, as you increase the density of what you're sewing, you want to move this down to increase the range of motion of that check spring or that take-up spring, and to increase the tension on that take-up spring as well, which is going to help you ultimately with having a better defined lock stitch. So if I were to stitch this same material we just stitched right here, this 100% cotton with a stiffener, if I were to sew it all the way up here, my lock stitch would not be as well defined up here as if I move it down into this range. It gives you an alternative. It gives you an alternative to adjusting this. Instead of adjusting this, you can adjust this depending on the type of sewing you're doing. So again, light sewing all the way up, heavy sewing, keep going, keep going, keep going, heavy sewing all the way down. And you can even go further than that. You can push it a little bit further out of the range. Okay? So for our purposes, for most of the sewing we're going to do today, I'm going to leave it probably right about there. It's going to be according to the manual between position B and position C. But because again, you can move this, it's not like click, click, click. You can move it anywhere in between. I would argue that you can make up your own letters, kind of like we do with stitch names. You can make up your own letters, and you can say, well, I'm going to sew this material not with A or B, but I'm going to sew it with D or E or F or G or H or I or, elemental P, whatever you want to call it, as you move this fine adjuster all the way down. Okay? All right. Quickly, the threading of the machine, as I really hammered that home, because I found on a lot of videos, people don't even address this. They don't understand what it is. They don't know why it's there. And so I really want to hammer that home in this live stream with Tenielle's machine for her benefit, since she hasn't sewn on this machine, and also for others as well that watch this later. Think of this as your secret weapon for having a good looking lock stitch. It's your secret weapon. Yeah. Matter of fact, you can write that in your manual and you can call it your secret weapon. Write it in your manual right now if you've got a manual. Okay. And I should mention to Tenielle, if you don't have a manual for this machine, get with me after the live stream. I've got a manual that I can provide to you. Okay. So I'll just mention that real quick. Okay. So threading off the top. Let me try to get the camera. Okay. So off the top, the thread spool, you kind of go underneath this thread guide right here, and then over the top of this tensioner right here. You then come down to these tension discs right here, right past our secret weapon, kind of go underneath, and you might have to pull that thread in a little bit deep, kind of hold it up here, and then pull it nice and deep into those discs. Obviously, making sure that your presser foot lever in the back is all the way up. Make sure your presser foot lever is all the way up whenever you're threading a sewing machine. So again, you go underneath here, off the top, over the top, draw it into that tensioner right here, down between the discs, nice and deep, over the top, over and between that check spring. See how I have the thread in between there? And then it goes underneath this thread guide right here. Then it goes behind this thread guide. You have to draw it from left to right behind this thread guide, if you can see that. Okay. Then we're going to come up to our take-up arm, and you can thread it through either one of the holes from right to left. We've got another thread guide right here on the faceplate, the very shiny faceplate. Yeah. And then there's a little notch right here in the faceplate where that thread comes down. There's another thread guide right there, just above the top of the needle. And you've got to kind of draw that in from the right to the left. You kind of draw it in from over here and get it nice and centered. And then you're going to thread this needle with the flat side to the rear. You're going to thread this needle from front to back. Okay. from front to back. And again, the significance of the flat side when you're orientating it with the needle is the flat side is also going to have the scarf that hook is going to move very closely to that needle to grab that thread in the sewing process. So orientating the flat side is not just a thing, it's critical to the sewing process because the flat side is going to have the scarf. The scarf on the needle is like that little indentation, that cut in to the needle. If you look at it, it looks like part of the needle has been cut out. That's the scarf. That's where that hook needs to sweep by very quickly with this rotary hook action and grab that thread so that you get a nicely defined stitch and you don't have issues with skip stitches. And that's what can happen if you orientate the flat side of the needle wrong. You'll all of a sudden be having skip stitches and you're like, what the heck is going on? It oftentimes can be the issue of how you orientated the flat side of the needle. So flat side to the rear on this machine, and you'll have great success, hopefully. Hopefully. The other thing I'll tell you real quick with regard to the bobbin, which is kind of hard to see because it's kind of underneath the edge, but the bobbin is facing out towards the front of the machine. The bobbin, when you put that bobbin into the bobbin case, the thread is going to be coming over the top, which means as that thread is dispensing in the sewing process, it's going to be turning that bobbin. If you visualize that bobbin in the machine, it's going to be turning that bobbin counterclockwise. Okay? All right. All of that blah, blah, blah. I hope you get something out of that. I hope it's helpful. Okay. So let me hook this camera back up and we'll do a little bit more stitching on this machine once I point the camera the correct way, sort of, maybe. I hope. All right, I'm going to see if I can get a little bit closer to, maybe, get a little bit closer to the action down here. There we go. That's a little bit better. See that? Eventually I figure things out. Eventually I do. Okay, so I'm going to real quick move this over just a little bit more. Okay, there we go. Get that down. And again, whenever you launch, make sure your take-up arm that I pointed out in the threading process of this machine, make sure your take-up arm is at the highest point. Okay? Make sure your take-up arm is at the highest point. Okay. So now we're going to be sewing a shorter stitch, straight stitch, with Tenielle's 130-6 from 1952, December 23rd, I believe is what the owner said. All right, here we go. All right. And I can see I have a little bit of residue of oil that kind of came up on the material. I think I might have just bound up our hook a little bit. Let me see if I can clear it here. I might have to demonstrate how to take the bobbin out because I just caught this on the hook by over sewing it. And that happens sometimes when you're stitching, you'll over sew where it doesn't have any material left. And then all of a sudden the thread will get caught on the hook. And usually by swinging the balance wheel down like this, you can clear the jam, but it looks like I'm not going to be successful in doing that. So that's okay. Things sometimes go wrong, and it gives us a teaching moment when we can learn how to do it a different way so that it doesn't happen to you on a live stream like me. All right, let me get that over there. So what happened now is because I over sewed the material, the hook has a loop of thread around it. I'm trying to get that free, but it's not accommodating us. So I'm just going to tilt the machine back very carefully. And you'll notice these pads that I have underneath the pedestal feet of this machine. It's because this machine has so much power with that 1.4 amp motor, and it would be skipping around if I didn't do that. So I'm going to tilt this back. I'm going to see if I can grab that bobbin case with my finger. Almost got it. There we go. And that's okay because this gives me an opportunity to show you the bobbin as well, and also clarify something that I said so that I don't give you misinformation. So this is the bobbin case right here for Tenielle's machine. And when I said that it turns counterclockwise, I was thinking backwards, which sometimes happens to me. With the thread over the top, this bobbin case is actually going to be turning clockwise. And you can kind of see that if I turn it this way, that bobbin is actually turning clockwise during the sewing process. And that's what happens sometimes when you're thinking about a machine, whether you're facing it, whether you're looking at it from the side, which way is that bobbin turning? The answer is actually clockwise on Tenielle's machine. So it's a good thing I had that little hiccup so that I could pull this out and make sure that I get it right. Make sure I get it right. Okay, so when we slide this back in, you can certainly pull this little tab out, and what it's supposed to do is grip that bobbin so the bobbin doesn't fall out. But I generally just kind of spitball it and just kind of slide it back in. So let's do that right now. Listen for that click. So it just clicked into place. Now I'm going to work on drawing that thread back up so we can continue sewing. And hopefully I don't over sew anymore. But again, with a 1.4 amp motor, it might happen. This thing is just get up and go and has a lot of oomph to it. And then what I do is just kind of grab that little loop, draw that thread forward like this, and then we can resume our sewing process. So like I said, I sometimes will explain things with the directions, but I'll get it wrong. So good thing we had that hiccup, and now you can see which way that bobbin is actually orientated in the bobbin case. Yeah. Okay, let me clip this thread. We'll look at this stitch line real quick. And again, I made a slight adjustment on our secret weapon over here. And then I also made a little adjustment on here. I hope I didn't take too much away from our top stitch. And I might have done that. Our top stitch looks a little bit underdefined compared to what it normally is. But let's take a look at these. You can see my little oil mark from a little bit of the oil residue from lubricating the machine got onto the material. So all in all, a good looking top stitch, the spacing, the formation, and we're probably, I can actually measure it to tell you exactly, but we're probably going to be around 8 to 10 stitches per inch. And again, I'm using a stick nail embroidery needle today. A stick nail embroidery needle is going to have a ball point instead of a sharp point. Does anyone know why the embroidery needles have a ball point on them instead of a sharp point? Does anyone know why embroidery needles have a ball point instead of a sharp or a serrated point? Yeah, beautiful, beautiful stitching. All right, if I turn it over, we'll look at that lock stitch now, and then I'll look at the live chat to see if you got it right. You can pretty much just hold it right there. I don't have to move it around as much. Yeah, some very, very nice looking stitching. And again, when you're doing stitching like this and you're sewing a wide field of materials, changing out needles, changing thread type can change the look of the stitching as well. But we got a really good result with this. So I'm going to get this back into position, and then I'll look at the live chat real quick to see if anyone got the correct answer as to why do they have a ball point on embroidery needles instead of a sharp serrated type point like you might see on a denim needle or a universal needle or certainly a leather needle. Why do they do that? Why do they have that type of point on an embroidery needle? All right, that goes down. The thickness of the thread used in embroidery. Yes. because of the embroidery thread. All of you are on the right track. All of you are on the right track. The reason that they have the ball point, which is kind of like a rounded point, it's almost rounded on the end of the needle for an embroidery needle, is because it's less likely to damage the material. It's less likely to damage the thread. So those of you that said, well, you're working with an embroidery threads can be a little bit more fragile, a little bit more delicate. All of you are correct. All of you are correct that the needle is designed specifically to safeguard the thread and to protect the material as it's piercing the material. So as we're piercing this 100% cotton with this stiffener, we're not having the advantage of a sharper point like most needles will be designed. It's going to be, think of it almost like with a slight rounded edge to it. So when we go through some of the heavier materials, we're really going to be testing schmetz. We're really going to be testing the design and the intent of that needle, because it's not going to have the benefit of a sharper point that can pierce that material. It's going to be a ballpoint rounded type point on the end to safeguard the material, to safeguard the thread. So thank goodness Tenielle's 1.4 amp machine has that German grit, that German gusto to force that embroidery needle through with greater force and greater velocity, because we're not going to have the benefit of that sharper point on this type of a needle. It's going to be almost like a dull needle in a sense, because it's meant to pass through without damaging that more delicate material, that more delicate thread. Okay, blah, 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 blah. You got it. You got it. Move on, Scott. Move on. Yeah. And Kathy's right as well. The grain of the thread, the grain of the material, just think of it as a lighter touch. Embroidery needles are a lighter touch when it comes to how they interact with that material. And that's certainly true of any material that they interact with, which will not benefit us when we move into some of the leather sewing. It's not going to benefit us, but we're going to try to get through it anyway. Okay, now I'm going to try to raise the camera up just a little bit. All right, I think I got it. So this is, again, our stitch width controller. Now we're going to do some zigzagging. So I want to go with the widest zigzag first. So I'm going to move our stitch width controller from 0 all the way over to 4. I'm going to move it from 0 all the way to 4. And then I'm going to move our stitch length over here from, I think we're right around on 4 right now. We're going to move it all the way to the very top, all the way to 5. I got to unscrew it a little bit to do that. There we go. I'm all the way on 5 now. So I've got the max stitch width. I've got the max stitch length. And now we're going to lay down a zigzag on this 100% cotton with this stiffener. Okay? And the other thing I'm going to do real quick, I get my take-up arm all the way up. The other thing I'm going to do real quick is I backed this off a little bit already. I don't want to back it off too much. And I also don't want to back off our super power over here, this little adjuster that's going to mess around with the tension on this take-up spring. But I also want to pad my deck a little bit, because when you're incorporating needle swing into any stitch, whether it's a decorative ornamental stitch or whether it's a more common zigzag, when you're thinking the points where that needle is hitting the material, the spanse of it like a bridge, the wider the spanse, the more support you need. Just like building a bridge for a car to drive over, you need more supports. And the support for a sewing machine is the tension. The tension is the support when you're spanning the space where that needle is going further and further apart, and it's drawing that thread over a larger spanse, almost like jumping the Grand Canyon. You got to have more tension. So what I'm going to do to pad our likelihood of success is I'm going to move our superpower down a little bit further so that it's going to create a little bit more tension on that lock stitch. Okay, I brought it down a little bit further. I'm really close to what the book calls C, a little bit below B on there. So I'm going to move that down a little bit further. And again, if you're sewing with like 100% rayon thread, real fragile threads, or maybe some of the embroidery threads, you want to make sure that this superpower thing is moved closer to the top, pushing it all the way up so it puts less stress on that thread, if that makes sense. Okay, let's do a zigzag now. Let's do a zigzag. All right, here we go. And I'll try not to over sew this time so I don't create problems for us again. Okay, here we go. I'll finally get my foot all the way on the foot controller, and then I can actually stitch with it. Wouldn't that be nice? Okay. And sometimes rocking the balance wheel like I'm doing right now sometimes helps a little bit in advancing that thread on these German machines. It just allows it to flow a little bit more nicely. Okay. Let's clip this thread and take a look at this zigzag that we just did. Also have to clip the thread on the back of here, which I didn't do the first time. My clips are starting to die. I think I've got to get new clips. I have to hit this thread, and this is just basic Coates and Clark, generalist type thread. I sometimes hit it with the blade of this multiple times to clip it. So I think my clippers are neat, close to retirement. So here's our zigzag that we did. Our first row of stitching here with a straight stitch, our smaller straight stitch, where I gummed up the machine because I over sewed. And then finally our zigzag. Take a look at this. I think it's really quite lovely, don't you? There it is. And if you're saying to yourself, is it the camera? Is it the camera, Scott? Is it the camera? Or what? That looks like that looks like a mammoth zigzag stitch. You're not losing your mind. The Pfaff vintage machines make one of the largest zigzags out of any machine ever made. It's a huge zigzag. So you're not losing your mind. It's not a camera trick. It's a huge zigzag. It's a huge zigzag. All right, let me go back up and talk less. Less talking, more showing. All right, let me turn it this way too. Turn it this way to you like this. All right, totality of the stitching, that's a gorgeous zigzag. That is a zigzag that everyone around the world will be envious of. They're going to hate Tenielle. They're not going to like Tenielle at all because they're going to be like, my machine doesn't make a zigzag that looks as beautiful and as sexy as that. Why not? Because it hasn't gotten workshop magic, you silly, silly person. Workshop magic makes all the difference in getting the clarity of stitching like that, along with knowing the functions of the machine, like that superpower slider that I showed you that can really help save you when it comes to getting a nicely defined lock stitch as you're stitching different materials. Nicely defined lock stitch. I'm going to turn this around and I'll show you this lock stitch now. Some really, really nice stitching, but I might do a little bit more fine adjusting on that to get even a nicer looking lock stitch for that zigzag and for that straight stitching. But all in all, a very, very beautiful lock stitch across the span of this material as well. I'm going to get a little bit closer to the camera. There we go. So again, as you're working with materials like this, and especially when you're working with a more sensitive needle, this stick needle embroidery needle that has that rounded point instead of a sharp point, the presentation of your stitching will change a little bit if you change needles. So if we were to go from a stick needle embroidery needle to a universal needle or a denim needle or any of the other needles you could name, the look of the stitching will change slightly. But all in all, you're still going to be able to tell when that machine is at the top of its game. And this is what it looks like right here. Beautiful, beautiful stitching with a lock stitch, and beautiful, beautiful stitching with a top stitch as well. So let's do this now. After I get this back into position, let's go ahead and lay down a much shorter and a much more narrow zigzag next to this one. And then we'll retire this 100% cotton for right now. So the modification I'm going to make on the machine, and then I'll adjust our camera down a little bit so we can get closer to the action, is I'm going to take this from about 4 over to about 2.5. This again is our stitch width. I'm going to take it just a little bit above 2 on the stitch width setting. Then I'm going to take our stitch length from 5 and I'm going to bump it all the way down to right around 2.5. Right around 2.5. And I'll screw it in place because that's what you're supposed to do according to the manual. Yeah. So we'll be good students and follow the manual, and I'll screw it in place so that it can't move. It's not going to move anyway, but you know what? The manual says it. So we're going to do what the manual says, doggone it. Then I'm going to make sure my take-up arm, right now it's at the lowest position. You don't want to launch from there. You want to bring it all the way up to the highest position, so it's just getting ready to go on that downstroke. All right. Now I'm going to see if I can adjust the camera a little bit, get us a little bit closer to the action. Just a little bit closer to the action. This boom thing is not booming. We're boomless. Oh, wow, it just popped off. That was creepy. I think I'm starting to kill this boom thing. I think it's not designed to be manipulated as much as I manipulate it. Pretty sure. Hold on a second. Oh, goodness. Getting close. I should have just left it alone. I should have left it alone. And it popped off again. All right, hold on a second. I'm going to win in the end. This thing is not going to win. It's not going to win. All right, let me see. Get that adjusted over there. Wait a second there. I think I went too far. And Emma sent me another one that's not a boom style, and I haven't put it into commission yet. I think I'm going to have to do that. Hold on a second. We're almost there. We're so close. All right, I'm going to leave it alone right now. I'm going to take my hand off of it. I hope it doesn't fall. I don't think it's going to fall. Hopefully it doesn't fall. Okay. So let me do this. Let me go ahead and stitch this much more short and much more narrow zigzag stitch now. The camera collapses. All right, here we go. Okay. So I'm going to try to not be tempted and mess around with the camera as much. I'll leave it alone a little bit more. And then I'll switch out to this other boom design that Emma sent me that will be a little bit easier to manipulate during a live stream. Okay. So here is our top stitching first. Our top stitching with our smaller, more narrow zigzag next to it. Yeah, that's actually a really good angle right there. Almost got it. All right, I'm just going to hold it still for a second. So a beautiful zigzag stitch as well. Again, we changed the settings on the machine a little bit. We could go a lot smaller than that. A lot smaller, a lot more narrow than that. But it gives you an idea of the range and the difference of what Tenielle's 130-6 from 1952, December 23rd, I believe she said. December 23rd, 1952. Okay, let me turn around. We'll look at the lock stitch. Lock stitch right here. Again, we're looking at the lock stitch. I'll go ahead and line this up and go across. So other than me not sewing really straight, the machine is doing a brilliant job. Beautiful lock stitch balance. We kind of tweaked around with that super power adjuster that I showed you, a little slider on the side of the upper tension a little bit, kind of manipulated that a little bit more. Got a really, really good result, I think. A really, really good result. And then we, at the same time, while we got a better defined lock stitch, even with needle swing, we also maintained our top stitch at the same time. And that's really the tricky thing about tension, is when you make an adjustment, think of it as cause and effect. If you make an adjustment to get a better defined top stitch, it may have an impact on the quality and caliber of the lock stitch if you go too far. So always make your adjustments slow and gradual. Make your adjustments slow and gradual, whether it's the special super power adjuster on the side of the upper tension, or whether it's the actual upper tension. Make them really slow, do another stitch line, see what impact you brought, and that way you don't go too far with taking away from one stitch to give to another. What do they call it? Stealing from Paul to give to Peter, or stealing from Peter to give to Paul, or something like that. Any rate, Peter, Paul, and Mary. Maybe it's Peter, Paul, and Mary. That's it. Yeah. But any rate, yeah, just take it real slow, be real gradual in your adjustments when you're trying to get the tension right, especially if you're sewing a wider field of materials like we tend to do on these live streams, as we tend to do on these live streams. Yeah, just take it real gradual. Yeah. All right. I'm going to retire this cotton finally. We had this cotton too long in front of the camera. Now we're going to go to something different. Okay. So I think what we'll do next, and I talked about the difficulty of it. I talked about the difficulty of sewing leather, but also sewing vinyl materials as well. I've got this bubblegum material. Kind of pull it like this. You can see why I call it bubblegum material. We're going to try stitching some of this bubblegum material now with this stick natal embroidery needle, and see how this machine manages the stitch tension and balance with it. It'll be a little bit more of a challenge. I think we'll just kind of sew around in a circle a little bit. Let me kind of put this down right there. Oh, I know what else I didn't show you on the machine, but it's pretty much the same as all the vintage machines. I didn't show you how to adjust presser foot pressure either, which is a major factor when it comes to how that stitch is going to present. I actually put them facing all the same way this time. So adjusting presser foot pressure is really critical when it comes to getting the fullness out of any stitch that your machine could sew. And on this particular 130-6, it's going to be this control right up here. I think you can see that. As you turn this clockwise, it's going to increase presser foot pressure for heavier materials, just like we would adjust that super power slider on the side of the upper tension towards the heavy materials. We're going to push it down further towards the 6 o'clock position or beyond. The same thing is true of this. As we turn this clockwise, it's going to push down heavier. If we're dealing with lighter materials, we want to turn it counterclockwise to reduce that presser foot pressure. Okay? It's really important that you know how to adjust that so that you can. I hope this doesn't fall. I think it's going to fall. I should have left it alone. I might have to tape it in place. I might have to grab some tape real quick and tape this in place, because it is determined to try to slide and fall. I hope it doesn't. It might. I'll try to catch the camera if it does. But But yeah, I think the spring on this little clamp thing that holds this boom in place, I think the spring is starting to let loose. And it might be because I have the cord weighing on it as well. Okay. So what I'm going to try to do now is I'm going to try to stitch around this bubblegum material a little bit and see if we can maintain the tension factor sewing through a high vinyl content material like this. Before that, I'm going to grab some painter's tape real quick and anchor this to the table so that it's less likely to fall. Give me a second here. Give me a second real quick. Yeah, I can't show you on the camera, but it's got like a clamp with a spring. And I think I beat this thing up so badly that the spring is starting to lose its tension. I'm going to put a little bit of painter's tape on there to increase the likelihood that we're not going to have this thing collapse in the middle of the live stream, hopefully. I hope. Okay. There it goes. Oh, gumdrops. It's sliding. It's sliding. It's sliding. Let me see if I can put a piece on the bottom too. Hold on a second. That puts so much tension on there because of the angle of this boom. Hold on a second. Oh, goodness. I'm just crashing and burning today with this boom thing. I should do a class on how to operate a boom. I think I could use it myself. Let me try taking that off of there too. See if that helps a little bit. I'm definitely going to change using to the other one that Emma sent me. This one is not going to cooperate for me, I don't think. Oh, that's an idea. I hadn't thought about doing that. Hold on a second. I've got one other thing I can do real quick. Hold on. I'm going to balance it against the machine real quick. Let's see if this works. I'm actually putting a clamp on there, seeing if I can put a clamp on there real quick. All right, I don't know if this is going to work or not, but I put a clamp on there as well. Let's see if that gets us to the finish line here. It might not. Well, I've learned my lesson. This has given us a couple of challenges, and I just kind of stuck with it. And that was probably a mistake. I probably should have switched over to the other one earlier on. But sometimes you just don't know. So I've added a clamp over there. I hope that that clamp will hold it for the rest of our time. Okay, let's march forward. Let's march forward, and hopefully the camera doesn't fall in the process. Yeah, that's a pretty good angle. That's not a bad angle at all. All right. But here lies the challenge of doing a live stream. That's why a lot of people will pre-record and they'll edit and do all the other things. Yeah, it's challenging sometimes, isn't it? Okay, so bubblegum material. Let's move on to bubblegum material finally after that challenge with the boom of the camera, blah, blah, blah. All right, here we go. And I'm just going to kind of stitch around a little bit and just see what kind of result we get. I haven't tried a stick needle embroidery needle on this high vinyl content bubblegum material before, so the result may be not so great, but we'll give it a try. Okay, here. Oh, I see what I'm doing as well. Let me ask for your input real quick. Let me ask for your input because I see that I didn't change it back anyway. Should we try stitching this bubblegum material using a zigzag or a straight stitch? And I'm not going to go with a super wide zigzag because of the vinyl content of this material really being a challenge when you look at stretching that thread out too far. But we can either do a zigzag or a straight. Just go ahead and type into the chat real quick, zigzag or straight, and we'll give that a go. Give that a go. Zigzag. It is a greater challenge. Yes. And Kaluku, I hope I'm saying that correctly. It's such a beautiful name, is saying, let's do a straight. So why don't we do both? Why don't we do a straight and a zigzag? We'll kind of buzz around a little bit. We'll do a straight, and then we will finish up with a zigzag more towards the center of this, okay? More towards the center. So we're going to start with a straight. Let me take our stitch width all the way over to 0. And I know you can't see that on the camera, but I am reluctant to touch the camera at all right now, unless I just do this real gently. So our stitch width, I put to 0. Our stitch length, we're going to go right around 4, 3.5 to 4. Yeah, right about there, I think. Okay, there we go. Got it. Okay, so we'll do straight, and then we'll finish up with a zigzag. Okay, finally, here we go. Okay, I think I can safely take these clips off now so I can have a little bit more fun. Okay. So we're going to go, I'll clip this thread as well since I've got it right there. Let's do some straight stitching around here. All right, stop right there. So we made an interesting little blah, 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 blah pattern there. Now we're going to switch over to zigzag. Make sure whenever you switch where you're going to be pivoting the needle, going to a swing stitch, make sure you have the needle clear of the material. So I'm going to go over to, let's see, let's go right about to 2.5. And I'm going to bring this down a little bit more. Our stitch width just a little bit shorter. And now we'll finish off a little bit of sewing around for fun, laying down a zigzag, and we'll see what kind of result we get. All right, here we go. Okay, I'll stop right about there. Stop right about there. Go ahead and bring our needle all the way up. Take us back to a straight. And we'll just take a look at this stitching. See how the See how we maintain tension balance with a very, very tricky vinyl-based material, going between the straight stitch and the zigzag. And again, whenever you're sewing a material that has a higher content of vinyl, that zig is going to prove to be a little bit more of a challenge for it, because again, think of the bridge, you're kind of spanning that material out. But you know what? Tenielle's machine didn't have any trouble at all maintaining some beautiful stitching. This little calicomb or whatever you'd call this pattern that I kind of made as we zigzag back and forth and we straight stitch back and forth. It's almost taking like those little things where well, I can't remember what they're called. Is it called a kaleidoscope? Is it a kaleidoscope when you do that sort of thing? But some beautiful stitching that this 130-6 from 1952, December 23rd, 1952, did a beautiful job of maintaining a beautiful top stitch with this bubblegum material that's high, high, high in vinyl concentration. Yeah. Kind of fun just to sew randomly for fun, isn't it? Just kind of fun sometimes to do that, just to goof around. And here's our, whoops, I'm knocking the camera that's delicate already. Here's our lock stitch. I just turned it over. See if I can stop the camera from wiggling. Here's our lock stitch right here. Again, beautiful stitch balance. The tension is maintained lovely. Even as you look at those straight stitches and the zigzag, the formation, the clarity of the stitch is exactly as it should be. And again, if you've never tried sewing on a high vinyl-based material before, it's not easy. It's not easy, especially when you're looking at working with a material like this and we're manipulating it quickly as we're changing directions. There's a lot of opportunity for the machine to struggle. But Tenielle's 130-6 didn't struggle at all. It did a brilliant job of maintaining a beautiful lock stitch and also a beautiful top stitch as well. And again, we don't have the benefit of a real sharp point to cut through this vinyl-based bubblegum material. We've got a ball point, rounded point, but it's still with the power of this machine, that 1.4 amp motor that was US made for this German company, did a brilliant job through and through. So I'll throw this to the back. And all of these sew-offs will be sent with the machine, so Tenielle will have a chance to see them herself and just how gorgeous and how magnificent her machine did. So again, when you're working with a machine like this, and you're working with such a powerful motor, it's sometimes difficult to know, can you harness that power? Can you harness that power that this machine puts out when it's got that much strength, when it has that much power? The answer is you can, but again, a foot controller that's electronic is going to give you better control in some ways, but it's also going to give you less control when you're working with a vintage machine like this. So that overrun that I did the one time that caused that little hang up down in the hook system can be a recurring theme. So I'm going to try to, as best as I can, hold that motor back. I'm going to do the best I can to hold that motor back and sew around the edges of this protected full grain leather. This is our first attempt to sew leather with this stick natal embroidery needle. Again, we don't have a sharp point. We've got a rounded ball point on the end of this needle. So it'll be interesting to see how we do, especially as we try to sew slower and more controlled using this particular needle that we're using today, sewing this type of protected full grain leather. And protected full grain leather, again, is going to be chemically treated to protect this leather against staining, to give it greater durability. All that translates to a higher piercing threshold. Higher piercing threshold using a needle that is not designed to do this. And as some of you know, I shared this in the last live stream. As some of you know, we have Schmetz needles the corporation, Schmetz Needle Corporation, following us now on Facebook and following us on YouTube as well. So I might get a nasty note from the higher ups at Schmetz Needles, since they're following us now on YouTube, following us on Facebook, saying, why in heaven's name are you sewing protected full grain leather using one of our stick natal embroidery needles? Why are you doing that, Scott? Why are you trying to set us up for failure? Quite the contrary. I'm setting you up for even greater success in showing that even though this is a targeted needle designed to sew and to create less damage to more delicate materials, with the strength of Schmetz, it still can get the job done, even sewing something like this in the realm of leather. That's my level of confidence in Schmetz. It's not to set them up for failure. It's to show that their product is so great, you can even take it out of the context of what it's designed to do and still enjoy success. I hope. I didn't try this off camera yet. After all that blah blah blah, I hope we have success. I think we will. I think we might. We may. All right. So I'm going to do a straight stitch around the edge of this Not going to do a full blown on size on the length setting of 5. I'm going to take it down to right around 4. So it'll, when you shorten the stitch length, it's going to make that machine work a little bit harder to lay down that tighter pattern of stitches, which will give me a little bit more reaction time to try to navigate around these tight corners. So I'm really doing it to be self-serving by shortening up that stitch length just a wee bit. All right. I'm going to get a quick drink of, yes, Diet Coke. And then we'll give this a go. So, yeah, again, to the Schmetz folks that are following us now, Schmetz Needles, following us on YouTube, following us on Facebook, I'm doing this to show the quality of your product being able to go well outside the scope of what it's designed to do. All right, here we go. Finally, after all the blah, 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 let's see how I can manage my stitch control and all that. Yeah, you know what I'm saying. All right, here we go. All right, needle down. Let's go around this way. Pivot over here. Back down. Needle down. Okay, now I went kind of fast. Now I'm going to be a good boy and try to finish off this last line or so of stitching on the slower side. I'll do my best to slow it down. Here we go. Okay, and I'm going to close the box for our finicky box holders. I'll see if I can close the box all the way. And the thing with a machine like this, when you're working with an electronic foot controller, it's going to regulate that energy going to that motor a little bit differently. So if it sounds like the machine is kind of like it'll rev up a little bit and then it almost sounds like it's going to stall, that's a product of the type of foot controller that we're set up with right now. Foot controllers that are electronic have circuits or circuit boards inside of them that regulate that energy flow in a different way than a traditional vintage carbon-based type foot controller with a ceramic inside is going to do it. So the machine runs differently because we're using a different foot controller. And that's just a quick explanation, because as I'm listening to the motor, I'm hearing that 1.4 amp motor saying, give it to me. And the foot controller regulates that energy in a little bit different way, which might be frustrating to that motor a little bit. But again, it gives you a little bit more flexibility in doing slow sewing in most instances. Okay, I'm going to close that off. There we go. Get that needle all the way up. We'll kind of draw this out now. Give that a clip. So again, not advisable to be using this type of needle on this type of sewing, but I think you're going to be impressed with how well Tenielle's 1952, December 23rd. I think I got that right. I hope I got that right. See how well her machine handled this difficult task of sewing protected full grain leather using this stick needle embroidery needle. Again, that does not have a sharp point. It's got a rounded pen style end on it so that it's less likely to damage leather or any other material, but it doesn't have the piercing capabilities of a regular needle. Okay, all of that blah, blah, blah. Let's take a look at this. I'm going to do it on sides. I think that'll make more sense. I'll show one side and then I'll rotate it, show the other side, and that way you'll be able to see it more clearly, hopefully. All right, I got to stop bumping the camera. Stop bumping the camera. So again, we just did something that the big shots at Schmetz Needles that are following us now on Facebook and on YouTube would probably not advise. This is where I kind of did the back tacking, is why it looks different there. Something that they wouldn't advise, but you know what? Sometimes people get too comfortable. They get too comfortable and they're not willing to push the boundaries like we are on live streams. So what I just showed you is that even using a needle that is designed for more delicate applications of embroidery can get away with sewing leather like this, probably about 3 to 4 ounces of leather if you look at it from the side. It can get away with something like this because of the quality of Schmetz engineering in how they make their needles, because of the quality of how they manufacture their needles. Got to find the right angle for this camera somewhere. There we go. Maybe there. All right, I'm going to go blind trying to get this lined up right for this silly camera. There we go. That's pretty good right there. Now I'm going the wrong way. Hold on, let's go that way. Or you just bump the camera again. Okay. So it's a beautiful top stitch, especially considering we sewed it with an embroidery stick needle. Now we're going to look at the back side and we'll see how we maintained tension. We may find that because I didn't bump up the upper tension, that the lock stitch is not going to be as well defined as it could be. And that's a simple adjustment on the machine, isn't it? So this is our lock stitch now. See if I can get it lined up with the camera reasonably so. So all in all, a good looking lock stitch, but it could be better. It could be better. And that is partly it's a product of the needle we're using. The needle doesn't have the benefit of having a sharp point that cuts through that leather and allows that thread to be pulled through very quickly. But it's also an adjustment on the needle as well, as far as the upper tension. The upper tension, we would have to bump it up, or we'd have to move our superpower slider down towards the heavy range to increase the tension on that take-up spring. But all in all, I'm really pleased with the way that Tenielle's machine handled this sew-off on this leather using a needle that's totally incompatible with the task. Totally incompatible. I finally got an angle that it makes some sense there. That's almost a good angle, isn't it, for the camera? So beautiful stitching using this stick needle, embroidery needle by Schmetz. Beautiful stitching, top stitch, lock stitch. And we can always make it better, couldn't we? Or we could also do a zigzag on this as well. And I would make a slight adjustment before I did that by increasing our upper tension slightly. Turn this a little bit of a turn. Also taking our super slider over here, bringing it a little bit closer to that C range to give us a little bit more pull as far as that stitching. So what we'll do now is we'll actually buzz through and see if we can lay down a zigzag on this material as well. I'm going to take my stitch width and move it over to about 2. Yeah, we'll bring it to about 2.5. Going to move our stitch length down a little bit further to about 2.5. So we basically have 2.5 here, 2.5 there on stitch width and stitch length. And now we'll try replicating the same sew off on this protected full grain leather, laying down a fairly compact zigzag stitch. We bumped up this a little bit. We bumped up our take up spring tensioner a little bit. That little slider I showed you on the slot on the side of the upper tension that allows us to put a little bit more control on this take up spring to define that lock stitch a little bit more. It's kind of what we were lacking when we did the straight stitch. We'll see if we can enhance that zigzag a little bit more on this protected full grain leather. All right, here we go. I'm going to stop right there. Okay, so we just did a little bit of random stitching. We just did a little bit of random stitching with a zigzag now with this protected full grain leather. Again, we're using a stick needle embroidery needle, which is not going to have the benefit of a real sharp point. It's going to have a ball point on the end that's not going to have as much piercing capability, but we've got the benefit. The trade-off is the 1.4 amp motor on this Pfaff 130-6 that's going to give us a lot more piercing capability. So here we did the outer edge of the straight stitch. I'm just going to look real quick. Where's my tape measure? We did the outer edge of this protected full grain leather, sewing a straight stitch of about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, about 10 stitches per inch on the straight stitch that we laid down. And then we just followed up laying down a zigzag, kind of randomly sewing around in a little curly Q to see if that stick needle embroidery needle with that ball point on the end instead of a sharp point could still go through with a swing stitch like this. That's what I refer to when that needle is moving. It's a swing style stitch, whether it's a zigzag or an ornamental decorative stitch. And we got a beautiful result here, I think, a beautiful result of a really, really nice looking zigzag. Now, how did we do on the back? How do we do on the back as far as maintaining that stitch balance, as far as tension? Let's see. Excellent, excellent job. We made that little adjustment, that little bump up of the upper tension, and then we also increased that take-up spring tension by bringing that magical slider down a little bit more, and that's exactly what we needed to do. We had a little bit of a loosey-goosey thing going on with the straight stitch. We bumped it up a little bit, and we sewed this zigzag, and now we've got a lock stitch for this zigzag that is absolutely page 34 plus. Exactly the way it should be. Beautiful, beautiful stitching. Get a little bit closer to get out of that glare, maybe. There we go. Even a little bit closer. I'll block out that light on the side a little bit. So I consider this nothing short of miraculous. This is nothing short of miraculous, not because we got through it using an embroidery needle that is not designed to sew leather. I'm going to acknowledge that again for our folks at Schmetz Needles that are following us. I get it. I get it that the needle is not designed to do this. But because of my level of confidence in Schmetz, in being able to get the job done, regardless if the circumstances and setup are ideal, I proved it again that you can sew protected full grain leather, about 3 to 4 ounces of this stuff. And with making slight adjustments to that upper tension, we were able to lay down page 34 stitching on the top stitch. There it is. And also page 34 stitching on the lock stitch as well. You know what? And Schmetz Needles, I think, gets it. I think it's the reason that they decided to follow us on Facebook and on YouTube. Schmetz Needles likes people that push the boundaries and, number one, have confidence in a German machine like this that started on eBay and was struggling a little bit when it came into the workshop because of bad wiring and motor issues and other things. And now this German machine with this German-based needle. If you didn't know it, Schmetz have the roots going back to Germany as well. So now a German needle with a German masterpiece of a machine like this can get the job done even when the circumstances are less than ideal. Less than ideal. There it is. Lock stitch, top stitch, lock stitch, ha ha, top stitch. It almost looks like a P, doesn't it? Kind of looks like a P in the camera, the letter P. But again, look at from the side of what we just went through with this Schmetz stick needle. Is it stick needle? I better get the name right. Yeah, stick needle. The Schmetz stick needle embroidery needle. 3 to 4 ounces of leather, and we got the job done. Okay, enough blah, blah, blah. Let's move on. Let's move on. Let's move on. Finally, let's move on. Okay. This stuff always makes me nervous. Y'all know that. You know that this stuff makes me nervous. This is that Naugahyde material. It's a man-made material that is made to look like leather. But like that bubblegum material that we sewed before, this stuff here, like that bubblegum material, this stuff is going to have a lot of vinyl in it. And so it's going to mess around with our tension. It's going to mess around with our stick needle, embroidery needle, and trying to go through this stuff. But we're going to give it a go anyway. And obviously by the shape that I cut out here, my goal is to see if I can buzz around a little bit. We might do like we did on the bubblegum material, kind of zigzag back and forth, kind of change directions. And we might also go between a straight stitch and a zigzag, or we might just stick with a straight stitch this time. Or we might just stick with a zigzag because I'm already set on zigzag right now. Yeah. What do you guys think? Should we sew this Naugahyde, this fake leather stuff? Should we sew it with a dedicated zigzag or a dedicated straight stitch? You make this decision. Type it in the live chat, and that's what I'll do. I'll set this down for a moment, and we'll decide what we're going to sew this time. Susie is saying a zigzag. What book did I get? What book did I get? Emma's saying zigzag as well. I'm not sure what book this is. Are you talking about the instruction manual for this book? This is the one that I had that I could offer to Tenielle. It's an original, but it's a reprint. And then I got it professionally bound. You can see that over there. It doesn't like that color, does it? So, at any rate, this is a great resource to have for the machine. If Tenielle wants it, we can work out a deal. Yeah, we can work out a deal. There it is. It's better when I go further away, isn't it? So I'm not sure. You might be talking about a totally different book. You might be talking about a totally different book. But at any rate, that's what I've got. Okay. All right. What do we got here? How long have we been running? How long have we been running? 2 hours, about 2 hours and 20 minutes. Oh, a shoemaking book. Oh, nice. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. It's interesting you're talking about shoemaking. And some of you might know this from the posts I did on Facebook, but that was the first machine that G. Michael Pfaff made. Was he made a machine that could sew leather and could specifically make shoes. That's probably how you got on that discussion. I'm guessing that's how you got on that discussion because of the roots of this company. The very first sewing machine they made was designed to sew leather and specifically to make shoes. Yeah, I'm guessing that's probably how you got on that topic. Maybe not. All right, so let's buzz around with a Zigzag. That seemed to be the consensus vote on sewing this Naugahyde material. And we're set right around on 2 by 2 is what we have. The stitch length is right around on 2, and then the stitch width is right around on 2 as well. So let's see what we get sewing this tricky material. All right, here we go. And I might sew this a little bit faster. We'll see. First of all, I got to get the electronic foot controller underneath my big old size 13 shoe. All right, here we go. All right, I'll stop right there for a moment. See if I can clip my threads so I don't sew over them. Clip that a little bit shorter. There we go. All right, let's keep going. Stop right there. It almost looks like the beginning of the Outer Limits program where they had that funny little circle spinning. Kind of looks like that a little bit, doesn't it? Kind of looks like that. And here, especially on this Naugahyde material, having that high vinyl concentration, you can immediately see where that ballpoint tip of this needle is really having to work hard to get through this needle, to get through this leather. It's really having to work hard to get through this leather because it doesn't have the benefit of a serrated edge or a sharp point to try to pierce through it. But it did a brilliant job. Let me see if I can get right over there. There we go. It did a brilliant job. Actually, I did kind of a brilliant job of sewing relatively concentrically straight as I was going around here. With such a powerful machine, it's a little bit more of a challenge, isn't it? Beautiful zigzagging going all the way around. And again, this is that Naugahyde man-made fake leather stuff. They used to make chairs out of this and just a variety of different things that made it a lot more affordable for folks that wanted to have a leather look but didn't want to pay for leather. Leather is obviously a lot more costly when it comes to putting it into your into your furniture and other applications that they would have used it for. And now our lock stitch. How did we do on the lock stitch? That's the big deal because we're incorporating needle swing. We're sewing through this Naugahyde material. using this stick needle, embroidery needle with that rounded ballpoint tip on it instead of a sharp point that zoom, can cut through it very easily. We're using basically the equivalent of kind of a dull needle with its design and engineering. And it's designed like that, like I said, so it doesn't damage the material, so it doesn't damage the thread. But you're not supposed to be sewing stuff like this. I know that. We're doing it anyway. We're doing it anyway. So let's look at that lock stitch now. You know what? A beautiful lock stitch also. Nothing loosey-goosey, nothing astray. Just a beautifully defined lock stitch going through this tricky Naugahyde type material. Tricky material. I think I almost got the right angle. There we go. Sort of got it. So some beautiful stitching, the lock stitch, the top stitch as well. This is our lock stitch. If I spin it around, this is our top stitch again. On some very tricky material, using a needle that really shouldn't be doing this. But again, it goes back to my level of confidence in this German company that makes the Schmetz needles, and certainly the German company that makes this fabulous 130-6 that belongs to Tenielle, now from the great state of Oregon. So, yeah, when you've got the best equipment, whether it's the needle or whether it's the machine, you can get a result like this, even when you're pushing the boundaries on the setup not really being the best setup for the machine, right? It's not the best setup, but still you can get great results. Still get great results. So not a lot of sew-off sandwich so far that I can show you. We did the Naugahyde. We just did that. We did the bubblegum material. We did the protected full-grain leather. We did the 100% cotton. I've got some denim. I've got some saddle-grade leather. And that's about it that I've got left. I actually contemplated, I don't know how well it would work, but I picked up this little frame. I'll just show it to you real quick. I picked up this little frame at the Dollar Tree. It's a canvas. This is a canvas material. I think somebody just sent me a text. Hold on. Nope, Facebook stuff. Facebook stuff. So I picked up this canvas at the Dollar Tree. I'm gonna roll the dice here and turn the camera just a little bit. I picked up this canvas. It's a white canvas. Not ideal. I should have a darker thread, but I actually contemplated trying to stitch this canvas. Who is that? Somebody's just hammering me on Facebook right now. I picked up this canvas at the Dollar Tree. It's actually in a frame. You can kind of see that, sort of, kind of. There it is, if I block the side of the camera. I actually contemplated trying to stitch this canvas. You guys think I should try it? Stitching this canvas in the frame. I would have to stitch it basically like this with this down, because otherwise it doesn't make sense to do it that way. I think I should give us a try with this stick needle, embroidery needle. Have we already given enough of a heart attack to Schmetz needles doing what I've already done? Should I try this? What do you think? Should I try it? See what we get? It'd be a little hard to see it, but we could at least give it a go. I'm going to look at the live chat, see if we can. I don't know if I can get this underneath the presser foot. I might not be able to get it underneath the presser foot. Yeah, I won't be able to do it underneath. I'll have to take the presser foot off if we're going to try this. Put it into place, put the presser foot back on. It's a lot of work just to goof around, isn't it? But part of the reason people love this channel is because we goof around. We do silly things that make no sense. Emma's always willing to try something. She's from New York originally. She's like, yeah, give it a try. What's the worst that could happen? Well, we don't know that yet. We don't know that yet. We don't know that yet. The worst that could happen. Well, let's do it for fun. Let's do it for the cause. We'll try sewing this canvas frame. But in order to do that, to get it underneath the edge, I've got to take the presser foot off temporarily. Got to take the presser foot off. Might need a bigger screwdriver. There we go. I really had that sucker tightened down. Okay, so we're going to take the presser foot off temporarily, kind of move it to the side. Get our frame underneath there. I think we can do this. I think we might be able to do this. Raise that needle up a little bit higher. Can I get it past that needle? That's going to be the trick. Just barely get it past that needle. If I had a free motion quilting foot, I could just throw a free motion quilting foot on there, couldn't I? See if I can do this. Maybe I should make this my last sew off since I'm doing something really goofy and reckless. Okay, so we got that back on. Now we tighten this up a little bit. Okay, got that nice and snug. See if we can put this presser foot down now. So I get this into the position that I want. So if any of you have Dollar Trees, near you, you could pick up one of these frames to be as goofy as me. Obviously use a different colored thread probably. Actually, I've got to get that thread underneath that presser foot as well. Hold on a second. You could try picking up one of these frames and see whether or not you can get away with doing this. I have no idea what's going to happen. I did not try this off camera, which again is kind of a foolish thing, isn't it? It's kind of a foolish thing to just all of a sudden say spontaneously, hey, let's see if we can sew canvas with this stick needle, embroidery needle, by putting the frame in upside down, taking the presser foot off. But you know what? What is life without a little bit of spice? This is our spice today. So let's see what happens. Let's see what happens. I hope nothing bad happens. That would be bad. It would be bad to have something bad happen. I think we'll be fine. Okay, let's give this a go. See what happens. That way you know if you should go to your Dollar Tree and check this out. Yeah. All right, I'm going to increase the stitch width just a little bit, and we'll lay down a zigzag just so it's a little bit easier to see it. It's going to be a little bit easier to see it with the white thread against the white canvas. The other thing I'm going to have trouble doing a little bit is turning this. I'm going to try to turn it gently on the bed as I'm rotating it. And we're not going to stitch a whole lot. We're just going to give it a go, see what happens. All right, here we go. All right, I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to stop right there. Get that needle all the way up. Now we have to take our presser foot off again in order to try to clear the material. And no, I've never done this before. And who knows, depending on the result, I may never do it again. I may never do it again. Oh, goodness. Just snuck it past that needle there. Just snuck it past. Oh, that's actually kind of cool. You know, it pays sometimes to do reckless, crazy things. It just does. It pays to do reckless, crazy things. All right. Get that back into place. There we go. Everybody will be talking. Hey, did you go to that channel where the guy sewed a picture frame of leather using that Pfaff 130-6? No, I didn't see that. Well, here's the link. Oh, boy. I'll probably get in trouble for this. I'll get a nasty note from the Schmetz people. We're not going to follow you anymore because you're crazy. Or they'll send me a note saying, hey, that's really brilliant. Yeah, that's really brilliant. I hope it's the other one. That's kind of cool. That's actually kind of cool. All right, let's take a look at this. I hope you're going to be able to see it, considering the camera and the glaring and everything else. Let's see what we can do with this. That glaring is just awful. Let me see if I can put my hand on the side here. I wish you could see this like I can see it. It's just really quite pretty. Really quite pretty with this canvas. The glare of the coloring, though, is not cooperating. Let me see if I can rotate the camera a little bit. Maybe if I rotate it over here, it'll be better. Boy, that looks so weird on the screen right now. Let's see if I can block it that way. I'm blocking the LED light is what I'm doing. This would be so much easier if I had a darker thread. You know that? It's a beautiful zigzag. I hope you can make some of that out as I'm trying to get this to present. Actually, on the back, because the color is less white, on the back, it actually shows up much nicer. It's much easier to see the lock stitch than it is to see the top stitch, isn't it? We'll have to try this again. We'll have to try this again. And in when I, instead of doing it spontaneously like I did, instead of doing it spontaneously, we'll plan ahead and I'll use a darker thread. I'll use darker thread so that you're able to see this a little bit more clearly. It'll stand out a little bit better. If we had done a straight stitch, you probably wouldn't be able to see it at all. The other option is, this is kind of another spontaneous, crazy thought. Other option is to take a Sharpie and to go over the thread, see if that helps. Be much easier to use colored thread instead of trying to do this with a Sharpie. And that doesn't help at all because of the white background. Well, I'll have to try this again. I'll have to try this again with a colored thread, but a colored thread that's going to be friendly to the camera. And maybe what I can see is see if they have darker canvases as well that I could possibly try to sew. But it's kind of an interesting concept, isn't it? Where you could take a frame like that, take off your presser foot, and you can, instead of taking the presser foot on and off like I did, you could just go with a free motion quilting foot like this. Where do I have them? I've got them somewhere. You could go with a free motion quilting foot like this. Something like that. And you could sit down with your grandchildren or with your kids, and you could create a little tapestry within that framed piece. You get done sewing it, maybe with a variety of different colors. Maybe you could even use one of the new Schmetz double eye needles with 2 different color threads. And you could let your grandchildren or your kids or yourself, for that matter, you could create a little bit of an artistic piece. It's already pre-framed. It only cost you $1.25 at the Dollar Tree. And you could hang that up as a memorable event of sitting down with a family member or a friend or who knows who, and make something that would be artistically compatible to put right up on the wall straight away. All you need is a frame. You've already got that, and a nail. And then you could display that as a remembrance of something that you did with your grandchild or with your kid, or maybe a neighbor kid or something like that. And it would be a lot easier using a free embroidery quilting foot like this than taking the presser foot on and off like I did. So yeah, just a different thing to try. It makes it a little bit interesting, doesn't it? It makes it a little bit interesting. Okay. Whoops. That's interesting too, bumping the camera with a Sharpie. Yeah. All right. Don't bump the camera anymore, Scott. Don't bump it anymore. And you might be curious, what am I wiping the bed off with? The Pfaff machines are world renowned for their engineering and their ability to sew through a wide field of materials, as I've demonstrated today already, even using the wrong needle. But they also are known for having issues with the paint. And even though this machine came from eBay and the paint and the decals are in very, very nice condition, to preserve and protect them, what I do for machines, especially the Pfaff machines, to keep the paint supple so it doesn't become brittle and start chipping like a lot of the Pfaff machines do, is you take a little bit of sewing machine oil on a cotton swab or a cotton ball or whatever, and you just periodically lightly wipe over that paint patina. It keeps the paint nice and supple, keeps it soft, and it keeps it from getting into that mode of chipping like a lot of the Pfaff machines do. Not to mention, this gives a nice appearance to the machine as well, especially when it's on camera. Kind of brightens the finish a little bit, and it kind of gives it even a lovelier look than it normally would. But mainly it protects the paint, because Pfaff, for some reason, with all the quality of engineering they put into their machines, the paint that they chose for a lot of their vintage machines, especially the Class 130 machines, it runs into issues notoriously. You'll see that all the time with Pfaff machines that are from Class 130, chipping paint, cracking paint, crinkling paint. They have all kinds of paint problems, don't they? All right, so what do we have left? We've got a little bit of denim. We can do a little bit of denim maybe. And we've got a little bit of saddle gray leather. I think I'll end with the saddle gray leather. We'll go down some layers of this heavy grade denim. I've got 2 layers right now. I think, considering the needle I'm using, I'm not going to do the normal 6 layers that I use. I could, but I think we'll go to 4 layers with the denim. and we'll consider it good. Probably could go to 6, but I'll stick with 4 for right now. And we'll do a couple rows on this. We'll do a straight stitch, and then we'll do a zigzag next to it. So straight stitch first. Go to right around 4. And again, when you're adjusting it, just turn your stitch width back to 0 for a straight stitch. Back to 0. And I've got this right around on 4. I don't have it at its full capacity of 5. Could do that, but we'll stick with 4 for now, I think. All right, let's give this a go. Back that up just a little bit. That's down. I'm going to bump up my presser foot pressure a little bit because we're dealing with the 4 layers of denim. Just give us a couple turns to increase that pressure down so it has better feed. All right, straight stitch first, and then we'll lay down a zigzag next to it. All right, here we go. That's our straight stitch. We'll pull this up and we'll do a zigzag next to it. And then we'll take a look at those 2 stitches together. Oh, and I'm seeing something. 5 layers of denim. We're going to have to bump up that upper tension a wee bit. And also adjust our slider down just a little bit further. Give that a little bit of a turn. All right. Yeah, it's not bad, but it's a little bit on the loose side. Not as defined as I'd like to see it. All right, let's lay it on a zigzag next to this now. Actually, you know what I'll do before I do a zigzag? I'm going to stitch it one more time and just see what impact that upper tension adjustment I made had in the appearance of that lock stitch on the bottom side. Let's do that first. And then we'll do a zigzag next to it. You can see this machine is just wanting to run away. Just running to run away. And I tend to like speed as it is, so I tend to be naughty when it comes to a machine that has the level of strength this machine does. Yeah, I like the look of that better, that little adjustment. And it just shows you when you know what to do, when you'll hear people all the time and you'll see them posting in blogs and on Facebook and other places like that, where they're just battling and battling and battling with getting tension right, depending on the type of sewing that they're looking to do. It's usually because they don't understand what to do to get the result that they're looking to get. But all of you do. All of you know it because you understand the tug of war concept of how tension works with a sewing machine. The upper tension is pulling up. The bobbin case down in the raceway is pulling down. So they're pulling back and forth like this constantly. Upper tension pulling up to define that lock stitch. Bobbin case pulling down to define the top stitch. And once you get them to work together, all of a sudden you can get results that you weren't getting before. And a lot of folks don't get it. They don't understand that. Probably because they don't come to class. They don't come to our class and they don't understand what to do. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to adjust our stitch width over here from 0 to, let's go with about just shy of 3. Our top setting for stitch width is 4. I'm just below 3, right around 2 3/4. And then I'm going to adjust our stitch length down to right around 2 1/2. Kind of screw that in. And now I'm going to lay down a zigzag next to this. And we'll see what we think of the zigzag and the top stitch once we look at them together. All right, here we go. Slow it down. There we go. Kind of tamed it back a little bit. Slowed it down a little bit. Yeah. Okay, let me get this back there. take a look at my time too, because I have no idea. So we're at about 2 hours and 43 minutes. I'm going to try to wrap this up with one final sew off on that saddle grade leather, and then we'll bring this to a conclusion. So this is our 4 layers. Again, 4 layers of denim. You can see it from the side there. 4 layers of denim. We did our straight stitch. I made a little bit of adjustment so I could address the zigzag lock stitch on the back side and make sure that it was going to be nice and tight, since we're going to be incorporating needle swing, and also so we can enhance that straight stitch a little bit on the second row down. So first of all, looking at the top stitch, you see, I might have this facing, wait a second. Trying to remember which way I had this. I think I had it like this now that I look at it. No, I think I had it like this. Pretty sure I had it like that. Well, at any rate, we'll look at both sides. We'll look at both sides. I think this is the top stitch. I lost track a little bit as I was going through this. This should be our top stitch and our straight stitch, and then our zigzag. Let's look at that first, and then we'll move into looking at what I think is the lock stitch on the bottom. Some days I just lose my focus and I lose track of where we were at. So, all right, let's get like that. Oh, camera still, camera still. So some really good looking stitching there. I'm going to try to get a little bit closer. There we go. Good looking straight stitch, good looking zigzag as well. I don't want to get too close. There we go. So some good looking straight stitching, good looking zigzag as well. Come on a little bit. There we go. Go back that way. Again, not a monumental challenge for this Pfaff 130-6. 4 layers of denim, but the fact that we're using a stick nadle embroidery needle with that ballpoint type tip on it, the point, I think we're doing really, really well going through this much denim. All right, now I'm going to turn it to the other side, which I think is the lock stitch. I kind of lost track, to be honest with you. This should be our lock stitch, I believe. And again, I made that adjustment because our top line of stitching here for the straight stitch was a little bit underdefined. And that's a product of that upper tension not pulling up enough. So when I did the second line of stitching right in the middle there, I had bumped it up. And so that middle stitching will be a little bit better defined than that top row that we did first. Also, our zigzag is going to be better defined because we had the benefit of that extra pulling factor up of that upper tension being bumped up. Okay, look at it a little bit closer now. Trying to get it straight here. Trying to get it straight. This is more difficult than it looks when you're trying to look over your shoulder at the laptop and trying to get it fairly straight. This is our lock stitch. I think I almost have it now. So all in all, I'm really pleased with what we were able to accomplish using this very specialized needle today. The last stitching I'm going to do is on this saddle grade leather. Saddle grade leather, as you probably know, is a very durable leather. It's used to make gun holsters. It's used to do a number of other heavy leather applications. So the person with common sense would say, why did you choose to do leather, and specifically saddle grade leather, as a last sew off when you could have done it much earlier with a needle that would have been at least a little bit sharper, even though it's got that uh, that rounded, more of a ballpoint type tip instead of a sharp point? You would have been more successful, possibly, than doing it last. But that wouldn't be as much fun. It wouldn't be as much fun to push the limits and to do saddle grade leather after doing all the other sew offs we've done. Just show them to you real quick. All the other sew offs we've done, like this Naugahyde material and this bubblegum material and this protected full grain leather. This is all in the live stream today, and this 100% cotton. And finally, last but not least, this 4 layers of heavy grade denim. So we did all of this already on this stick nail embroidery needle, a little mini sewing sandwich. And now we're going to finally wrap up this live stream by me stitching saddle grade leather using this specialized needle. Yeah, it's a little crazy, but crazy is fun sometimes, isn't it? Okay, so let's do this saddle grade leather as a final off, and then we'll wrap up this live stream. And I might try to go a little bit wider on a zigzag so it's easier to see it. Let's see, we're right around 2.5. We'll do a 3. Do a 3. I think we've got enough upper tension now. Okay, so I'm going to buzz around now. We'll do this final sew off, and then we'll wrap this live stream up. All right, here we go. And if you're joining us late, our setup today is Coats & Clark Dual Duty XP thread that I purchased at Joann Fabrics, or Joann's as they call themselves now. On the weekends, I think it's Friday through Sunday or Saturday and Sunday, one of the two, you can buy 3 and get 2 free. So that's what I typically do, because I always like to send the machine threaded and ready to sew on for my customers, for the owner. So I tend to go through a lot of thread. I go through a lot of thread very quickly, giving a spool away with every machine. All right. Saddle grade leather. Again, if you joined us a little bit late, we're sewing with an embroidery needle today with a point on the end that is rounded instead of sharp. So not ideal to be sewing leather, but we're doing it anyway. We've already done it before with protected. Now we're going to try it with saddle grade leather. Plus, we're going to incorporate needle swing and lay down a zigzag on this final sew off. Almost had it in the camera. There we go. Schmetz stick needle embroidery needle. All right, here we go. I'll buzz around and we'll just see how this machine's going to be fine, but we'll see how this needle holds up on this final sew off saddle grade leather. All right, here we go. Give us a quick cut. All right. That takes a lot of control. And I'm more of a pedal to the metal type guy when it comes to sewing. So it's kind of fun to be able to try something like that and just see if I can harness the power and also harness my own control as I'm doing it. So, all right, let's take a look at this. I think you're going to be as impressed as I am. And I think the Schmetz people that are following us now on Facebook and on YouTube are going to be equally impressed that we did this. We did this with a Schmetz stick needle. S-T-I, what is it? S-T-I-K? No, S-T-I-C-K. Stick needle embroidery needle that doesn't even have a sharp point. It's got a kind of a ball point, rounded point on the bottom so that it's less likely on delicate materials to damage the material or the thread. And we're using it to sew denim. We're using it to sew leather. We're using it to sew bubblegum material. We're using it to sew Naugahyde, which is a high vinyl content material. Total disregard for what the Schmetz needle people would want the needle application to be used for. But I hope they respect the fact that we did it successfully, we did it safely, and we brought a great outcome to show that their product is so good. Schmetz needles are so good that you can even take them out of context in the application they're designed to do, and you can still have great results like this right here on the saddle grade leather. That's our top stitch right there. I'm gonna rotate this just a little bit, see if we can avoid that light a little bit more. Maybe that other angle is better. Folks, that is what we call on this channel a page 34 plus stitch. And what an incredible feat, considering how much of a workout we've already given to this stick needle embroidery needle. Again, it doesn't have a leather point on it like a leather needle would, a serrated sharp point that cuts through easily going through leather of this grade. It's got a rounded ballpoint tip, and yet it managed this beautifully, greatly in part to the quality and the caliber of this Pfaff 130-6 that belongs to Tenielle from the great state of Oregon. So, you know, like I said, if you've got the best tools, you're able to do the impossible, which is kind of what we did on this live stream today. It really is. Sewing a top stitch like that and laying down, a page 34 plus stitch that's absolutely spectacular, absolutely brag-worthy. Now, what are we going to see when we turn it over? Is it going to be a bird's nest? Is it going to be a nightmare? Is it going to be a quality of stitching that the Schmetz needle people are going to reach out to me and say, I told you so, I told you so, I told you so. Don't use a stick needle embroidery needle to sew saddle grade leather. It's insane. It's crazy. It's reckless. It's predestining yourself for chaos and being out of control, Scott. You're out of control. But we love being out of control on this channel, don't we? We love being crazy and kooky, like Herr Obermeister saying, look at those stitches. Look at those stitches. Page 34 stitches being done on Tenielle's my brain is so scrambled. 1952, born December 23rd. Yeah, got it. Nailed it. And Herr Obermeister is even looking at this stitching going, that makes no sense. That makes no sense. How did you do that, Scott? Is it workshop magic? Is it the quality and the caliber of the machine? Is it the quality and the caliber of the Schmetz stick needle embroidery needles? Not designed to sew this, but they're doing it anyway? Because guess what? Hello, they're a Schmetz needle. They're a Schmetz needle, and they can do the impossible. Tenielle's 1952, almost got it wrong, 1952, December 23rd, masterpiece of Western engineering can do it because it was made to do the impossible. Herr Obermeister was made to do the impossible. Yeah, he was. So what are we going to see on the other side? Are we going to have a fail or are we going to have a success? What do you think? Fail or success? Type it in the live chat right now before I turn it over to show you what we accomplished doing the impossible. What we accomplished doing the impossible, like an Olympic athlete that's trained for years and finally is on the big stage, just like Tenielle's 1952 130-6 is on the big stage right now on the Cow Country live stream. You can't change things here. You can't edit it. You can't, it is what it is. So what are we going to see? Success or failure? Success. Duh. Only success, only success, only success on this channel. We run into boundaries and barriers sometimes. We run into hiccups, but every single time we've overcome those hiccups and we made slight little adjustments and then boom, done. Same thing again. This is absolutely spectacular lock stitching using a ballpoint stick needle embroidery needle. So all of you at Schmetz right now, all of you that are on the Schmetz needle team, whether you're in Germany, whether you're in the States, wherever you are, take a big breath and say, wow, our product is that damn good. I just said it. I said damn, because Schmetz needles are just that damn good. They just are. So if one of the moderators, one of the leaders wants to throw me into the penalty box for saying the word damn, I just said it again. Schmetz needles are just that damn good. Tenielle's 130-6 is just that damn good. Scott, with the workshop magic, is just that damn good. Yeah, we are. Incredible lock stitching using a needle that wasn't designed to do this. All right, we're done here. We're done. How do you do better than this? How do you get it done? There's a saying I love, and I'll end with this quote, and then I'm going to leave it in the hands of the moderating team as I set up my little countdown as I've been doing for fun. One of my favorite quotes is, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is not an act, it's a habit." We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is not an act, it's a habit. We have the habit of excellence on the Cow Country team. My leaders have that habit. All of you that are in this classroom have that habit. The owners that invest in sending their machines to the workshop and letting them get that incredible touch of workshop magic, they have the habit of excellence. Tenielle has the habit of excellence. Her husband, Scott, has the habit of excellence, who drove these machines all the way from Ohio to the workshop, and now they're going to be traveling all the way home to the great state of Oregon. It's all about excellence, and that's where Cow Country stands apart from all the other people out there that in some cases are charlatans, and they're trying to peddle machines that are not fully restored. and they're trying to market things that are not true, trying to say they're just as good as what's happening in Oconto, Wisconsin. Absolutely not true. And you can see the evidence of that right here. When we can accomplish something like this with a setup that is totally set up and destined for failure, and we can deliver success like this, after that stick needle embroidery needle has already done so much of the impossible tasks, and get results like this, like that, that's the difference right there. That's the difference. All right, let me adjust the camera a little bit. I'm going to try. So we can get a final glimpse of this incredible 1952, born December 23rd. I believe I got that right. 130-6. It started on eBay. It started on eBay like a lot of machines will. But thank goodness, Tenielle and Scott are so doggone smart. And they said, you know what? Before we try to put these machines into commission, before we try to put this eBay machine into commission, knowing there's a lot of charlatans out there, there's a lot of fakers. And you know what? Unlike some people that fake it until they make it, these people don't care if they make it. All they care about making is a quick sale on eBay, and then they have a no return policy and they run away and they hide. They don't go on a live stream like this, putting their reputation on the line with a stick needle, embroidery needle, and a baseline type thread, and they run it through a matrix of stuff like this. Saddle grade leather. Hold on a second. Yeah, you can see it. You can see it. Saddle grade leather. Let's go over there. There we go. Saddle grade leather. Naugahyde. Bubblegum material. Protected full grain leather. 4 layers of heavy grade denim. And last but not least, good old fashioned 100% cotton with a stiffener. This is putting your money where your mouth is. When you go on into a live stream with a less than ideal setup, with an embroidery needle that has, instead of a sharp point to go through stuff like this, it's got a rounded ball point end on the needle. And yet we accomplished success upon success upon success. And it's because Schmetz needles are just that damn good. Western German engineering with a Pfaff 130-6 like this that Tenielle hand selected from eBay and then had the wisdom to send it to the workshop. This machine is just that damn good. And you know what? Tenielle and Scott are just that damn good because they invested in workshop magic. So when this machine gets back to Oregon, oh my goodness gravy, is Tenielle going to have fun with it. You might even see Scott sitting down to this machine as well. Not me, Scott, her Scott, sitting down as well, putting this Western Germany engineered machine to the task. And I'm going to elect to put a different needle in here before I ship it off. I'm going to put in a 9014 Schmetz Universal needle, but Tenielle can always get other specialized needles that Schmetz offers to try different things with this incredible, incredible machine. Well, thank you to everybody. Thank you to the moderating leadership team for minding the store and taking such good care of our family and taking care of our owner as well, as we were privileged and honored to have Tenielle in this live stream. She's a very busy physician assistant. Her husband is a very busy physician assistant. And if you didn't take advantage of getting free medical advice from her while she was in the live stream with us, hey, it's a missed opportunity. It is. Let me ring the bell and I'll get our counter out. And I wish the rest of you to have a great week. And thank you again for being a part of our family. And the next live stream we do, I'm going to be using a different setup, getting rid of this boom, which has lost its boom. It's boomless now. It's boomless. All right, let me get our counter up. Where is it? I'm going to find it eventually. And again, if you don't do Facebook, you miss a lot. Later today, by later today, I'm going to have all the progress shots posted showing the process that I took Tenelle's 1952 130-6 through. I usually post them before, but I've just been too busy. So by the end of today, I'll have all those pictures posted. You'll be able to see the regimen and the workshop magic process that I've taken this machine through. But along with that, you also miss goofy stuff like this on Facebook that I post all the time for fun.
They're going to try to rush me and get my sewing machine that Scott prepared for me at Cow Country. Not going to happen. We'll fight to the death. I see them, Mr. Spock. They're going to try to rush me and get my sewing machine that Scott prepared for me at Cow Country. Not going to happen. We'll fight to the death. I see them.
But that's the goofy kind of stuff. And people that do Facebook can attest to the fact that I do goofy stuff on Facebook all the time to inject some fun and humor into the sewist space and the vintage space as well. Got to have a little bit of fun. If it's not fun, why do it, right? But for right now, we're going to wrap this up. I'll set my timer up. We'll do our countdown like we've been doing for fun. And hope the rest of you have a great week. And what we might do another live stream on, what is today? Today's Tuesday, right? We might do another live stream on this coming Saturday if I have something prepared. Hopefully I do. All right, countdown final. Here we go. And also a special thank you as well to the owner, Tenielle and Scott, for giving me an opportunity to have this great machine on the workbench. Fabulous machine. Live long and prosper. Absolutely. As my grandfather would have said, live long and prosper, Lord willing, and the creek don't rise. Yeah, that was one of his favorite sayings. 20 seconds or so left. I'm going to get over and get ready to end the live stream. When I end the live stream, you still can type in the live chat for a period of time before it times out. So take advantage of that. Now you can do the countdown yourself as we go 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Take care, everybody. God bless.